Boom, we are live. Friday evening. Hope everybody is well, staying safe, staying warm, and or cool, whatever it is where you are. This evening, ladies and gentlemen, we have a fantastic podcast. This is something I wanted to do for a while. I put it off because I wasn't sure what was happening with COVID, and maybe thought we'd get it done in person. But you know what? Couldn't wait any longer. God damn it. If you're in Ontario, you definitely know these guys, so this is going to be a super fascinating chat. So what I think, I'm just going to get this going. This is 53. What's good, y'all? This is C Certified Brewhead, and welcome to episode 53 of Beer Another Shit, the podcast, Adjunct Series Quarantine Edition. This evening, we have a very special podcast. We have two gentlemen in Toronto, Ontario, who have really started something unique, something that I don't believe I've really seen anywhere else on the planet or even heard of. What they've really contributed to the Ontario and after that, the Canadian craft beer scene is fantastic. It's much needed. It brings a whole other angle. Mate, I'm looking forward to it. We have Mike and Chris from Craft Brand Co. Boys, welcome. There we go. Thank you guys.
Oh, cheering! It sounds so happy.
Right? We got the audience just behind the couch, waiting for you. How you boys doing? Great?
Good, man. Good. Great to see you.
Likewise. This is a long time coming, so I really appreciate both of your time this evening. It's I'm super stoked. You guys are in the office. That's a sick ass wall you got there. I love it.
Yeah. It's been pretty wild. I mean, we hadn't been in the office together for quite some time over the pandemic. I mean, we went long stretches. We're 8 years into the company a couple weeks ago, and we went long stretches over this last 12 months without being in the office together. So this gave us a really great excuse to sit in here and drink some beers and hang out.
I love it. Basically, I guess that's where everybody who works for the company would be based out of the office there. So I guess since COVID, everyone's just been working remote and you haven't really had much of a need, with the exception of, I imagine, maybe sales reps coming to pick up product and stuff like that.
Yeah, most of the sales reps work remote anyways. They stop by here to pick up tap handles or coasters or beer samples, stuff like that. And then, of course, to hang out. We have a golden tea machine here. Try to improve their game, improve their handicap on the golden tea machine. But for the most part, it was just certainly in early pandemic, when we were building the e-commerce side of the business up, it was really just one person at a time here. We would take turns building, packing, shipping the stuff out, and our downtown Toronto sales rep Brian was doing curbside deliveries. We had Craig doing curbside deliveries down in Southwest a couple of days a week. It was different times. But yeah, and even now, we're still not really all at the office. We get together. I think everyone was at the office. We were tasting a new brand that was coming in the portfolio, and that was the first time everyone had been in the office for over a year.
Yeah,
so it's pretty crazy.
How do you manage that with the team? Like, I guess everyone's just masked up or separated or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot on our phones. We do a lot in our WhatsApp group of, keeping kind of everybody, in tune and sending good gifts and making everybody laugh. And we've got a really tight knit crew. So yeah, I think we really missed the kind of face-to-face hangouts, but it made it that much better when we were able to. And especially over this next, couple months, we'll have some really good excuses to hopefully get back out there on the road and spend some time together.
Yeah, I love it. That's great, man. I'm glad you guys are slowly getting back to some form of normalcy with it all,
Yeah.
On that note, speaking of tasting, let's get into the first beer that we're rocking tonight. Do you guys want to tell us about this glorious little gem right here with the candle in it?
I mean, we should say that anyone that's following along, we do have this package.
Please tell them about it. I meant to mention it.
Yeah, no worries. So we have these delicious beers. This is the Omnipollo Maz that just got canned, last Thursday?
Yeah, the 22nd.
22nd. So we shipped you some beers, but we've also put the little 6-pack of beers on the website for people to buy if they want to drink along at a later date. They can certainly do that.
This beer, one of the really, really cool things about, where kind of our journey has brought us is, we get, chances to try these beers at times. And, we're blown away by them, and then we go years and years and years without having them. So Mazarin was a beer that we had in Stockholm at Omnipollo's, kind of tap room pizza joint that they have in Stockholm there. And this was probably 3 years ago now, and we were absolutely floored with it and really wanted an excuse to brew it here and launch it here. We loved the can. We loved everything about it. So we hadn't had it in, 3 years up until when we canned it, a few days ago. And again, we kind of took that smell and took that sip, and we were just like, fuck, there it is. Like that's the beer that we remember from 3 years ago. And so this one's super exciting for us. We've just been loving it around the office, like loving it.
So it's an oat pale ale from what I'm seeing here, 5.6%. Yeah. What are we talking with the hops and stuff in this one?
Yeah, so this has got a really nice hop blend of Citra, Simcoe, and Amarillo.
Nice.
And this is kind of one of the OG Omnipollo beers. This is one of the ones as they were really kind of starting to get their legs under them. They put this one out as kind of a hop forward beer, but they wanted a bit of a different hop note. Hanoch does these really great on YouTube. It's called Beers with Hanoch, and it's kind of him in their facility chatting about these beers. And yeah, this one kind of near and dear to his heart, near and dear to the brewery's heart, and has been around for a while. Yeah, it is a classic. I think it's in 40 countries now, I think, or something like that.
Damn. So that's amazing. I love that you guys were able to bring this back and recapture that feeling that you got over there. That's fantastic. What I'm getting immediately, it's this really feels like a Vermont style kind of IPA. As far as if you're saying it was one of their original ones, I would imagine that they probably would have been influenced by maybe more the Vermont style prior to the New England. There's a bit of that kind of piney bitterness that you like. Everything else about this characteristic wise is straight like New England, but it's got that piney bitterness. It's not overwhelming at all, but it's kind of similar to what you'd find in maybe like a Heady or Sip of Sunshine or something like that. Am I off there or?
Yeah, no, you're 100% bang on. This does predate the kind of NEPA craze, and so it does have a fingerprint that harkens back to, the hops of yesteryear more than it does the ones today. And then the aroma is like super punchy right now. I mean, it's spicy. It's beautiful right now. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, man. I'm getting that. Spicy is a very good word for this one. It's like with those hops, like look in Citra, Simcoe, Amarillo. I mean, that's like straight tropical fruit bombs. But I guess the way they've worked with it, they've been able to bring out that sort of peppery spice or something like that in this. It's brings a whole other dimension to it. It's really good.
Yeah, no, it's super crushable. The pale ales are my absolute favorite style. Like before we brewed this, the Mikkeller's Peter Pale and Mary, which we brew here, was one of my absolute favorites, and it was one of the only sub 5 ABV beers we had in our portfolio. So it was a really good day drinking beer, or session beer. But I found it totally crushable, and I would put this up around there. Like I find this one, even though it looks all hazy and it has. It has plenty of punch. I still find it super sessionable. It is a little bit more approachable than it seems when you pour it in the glass. Like I find it very easy to drink.
Extremely, so smooth. That mouthfeel is exceptional. Like, great.
Yeah, the oats really make it. The oats really make a beautiful mouthfeel on this.
I wonder if now we're talking about the oats for this one. I wonder if the original like Vermont style IPAs or pale ales, if they were brewed with oats, because I don't recall them having a mouthfeel like this, which is what makes this be pretty interesting and unique. That it's got the mouthfeel of like an 8%, haze bomb that's got no bitterness, but it's kind of more on this on the Vermont style. With that, it's like a nice kind of middle ground, which is fascinating that they've been doing this so long ago. Great, man.
Yeah, I think and one of the hallmarks of Omnipollo's beers, outside of being kind of big and bold, is they really all have a hallmark of great mouthfeel, whether it's their imperial stouts, whether it's their non-alc that we make, whether it's Zodiac or the fruit beers. They all have this little bit more viscosity, a little bit, smoother, larger mouth feel. And yeah, they drink, quite often a lot bigger than they are, even though some of their beers are pretty damn big.
Yeah, man. They're one of the, I would argue, probably one of the most innovative breweries on the planet. They do some of the most wildest shit I've ever seen. It's amazing.
They've got this, they just have this team of just all of this collection of people that just all kind of push each other there. And they're all super weird, cool, unbelievably bright people. Our first time there was kind of really seeing the power of it and just kind of the magic of it. We had drank the beers, we'd seen the labels, but to kind of, wander around and hang out with them and see what they're about really was, we were big fans before, but I think we left there saying, yeah, these guys are doing some of the coolest shit on earth for sure. And it's infectious.
Absolutely. They are like Hanoch and Carl and Carlos, their whole team. They're the reason why when we started the company, that is why. Like when we wanted to build up the craft brewing company, wanted to build something that we loved the people we worked with. We'd run through walls for the people we collaborate with because they're great people, and those guys are the epitome of that, right? Like we love working with them, we love hanging with them, drinking some beers, chatting with them. Like they really are, and this is pervasive across the whole craft industry, right? Like it's culturally, the craft industry does have a lot of really decent people in it that usually put the best intentions first and go above and beyond and help each other out. These guys are just, you feel warm and fast friends right from the first time you meet them. Like they're very welcoming, they're very embracing, they're very open. It was right from the first time we ever met them, there wasn't this pretension of, I'm some up and coming superstar and we're doing the coolest shit. It wasn't that at all. It was like, fuck man, aren't we all just living the dream? Like, Isn't this the best?
That's so cool. Particularly because I think that they, and you guys could probably speak to this more, but I feel like they're arguably the reason for a lot of styles that are popular today. Smoothie sours, they were doing the frozen slushies and probably pastry stouts. I think all of that stuff before anyone. I would argue, without knowing, from what I understand, they basically invented the shit. Like, and they are responsible for better or worse. Some people don't like it, but I love it. Fun and beer, go together. So, I feel like they've really driven that culture, and people have seen what they're doing and maybe brought that across to North America and then therefore to the rest of the world. You guys would know better, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. On the pastry stouts, and some of the, the big fruited sours, absolutely. The nod kind of goes to Hanoch, really. I mean, he's got an incredible team around him, but man, the guy is, the brewing genius, right? Like the things that he dreams up that, even at times you read on paper and think there's no way that's going to work. And then you try it and you're like, wow, how does that work? Like, that's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. And, they can be polarizing, right? They definitely can be polarizing, the beers, of whether you're in that camp or you're not. They start conversations. They make you think about what's possible in the world of beer. And again, whether you're in or out of that camp, is kind of irrelevant. It's, they have this ability to carve out their own path in this space, which is really difficult to do in this day and age in beer, with a different brewery popping up every week. It is different to be unique and to do your own thing, and they march to a very different beat of that drum for sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. I just wanted to point out for anyone who is considering getting the pack, I actually put it in the description right now. So obviously I fix up the description afterwards, but I put it in there now so you can go hit that. And then it also kind of occurred to me that we're talking about Craft Branco, but we're spending all this time talking about Omnipollo. And for people who aren't familiar with what you guys do, they might be like, what the hell is going on here? So maybe we should give these folks a bit of context for those who, strangely might not know who you guys are, what you guys do. Should we start with, let's start with getting your beer histories, how both you individually got into beer, and then how that kind of led to Craft Branco's existence.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll go first since my lips are already moving. I moved to Toronto back in when the century ended and the world ended, but then it didn't.
But they did
99, and I was an out of work actor looking to, find the bright lights of the big city, and I was working as bartender at the Lion King, and Steam Whistle had just launched in 2000, and we were serving at the theater, like crazily enough, this massive theater downtown Toronto is pouring like the newest craft brewery out there. But most of the people coming there were American tourists and didn't know it at all. I had no idea. So then we would sit there and drink it, the bartenders.
Right.
And I loved it. And I was super broke. And the Steam Whistle sales rep came in one day and he's like, hey, if you work at the brewery, you get like a free case of beer with your paycheck. And I was like, oh man, this is the type of, I mean, I want to be an actor, but if you have to have a Joe job where you get a free case of beer is pretty ideal. So I sent them the email. They put me on the production line. Like the next week, I sent them an email saying, hey, I'd love to work. I love your beer. I'd love to work on your production line. I hear you get a free case of beer with your paycheck. And they're like, yeah, show up, steel toe boots, work on the bottling line. And I was like, okay. And that was the start. I started at the very bottom, schlepping dirty bottles on the production line. And after the first year, I was doing all the events off site and working in the store. And then I became the marketing manager and then ultimately director of marketing. I spent 9 years there. I spent most of it in the marketing department. After my first year, I was pretty much up in the marketing department doing the sponsorship partnership stuff for them, and then director of marketing. And then I left there in 2010, started consulting in the U.S. for a brewery out of Sri Lanka called Lion Brewing. They're having some issues with their U.S. market. So then I started traveling to the U.S. 1 week of every month, visiting every state they were in, finding out what wasn't working, and then rebooting their brand there. And that's when I would come back from the U.S. and Mike and I would get together for beers because we grew up in the industry together. Started same tier, same level, same time, working the same festivals, 2:00 in the morning, leaving and going to have some pints someplace or whatever. So that was what brought us up to, we started hanging out, having beers, and I was like, man, there's so many great beers. And then the dream happened, right?
Right. Okay. That's amazing. So Mike, what's your side?
Yeah, I've been lucky in that I've spent my entire working life in craft beer. I went to Laurier in Waterloo and applied for a part-time job midway through university at 3 places: Sam the Record Man, a local bar, and Brick Brewery. And Brick Brewery hired me on the spot to work in their retail store, ringing in sales.
Right.
Worked my way up there to events manager, marketing manager.
Where was
Brick's in Waterloo. So Brick Brewery is, so they're kind of the second, they're total OG status. Okay. They're probably the second oldest craft brewery in Canada and
oldest in Ontario.
And the oldest in Ontario. Wow. December 1984. And so again, I know what I didn't know at the time. If I would have known I was spending a life in craft beer, it would have been even more special to me. But it was really special. Jim Brickman, who again is kind of our Canadian craft beer OG. I got to know him well, and my office was beside his. I had this shitty little office, where the person that had it before me was a 10-year smoker in the office. So the walls were yellow, brown, and gray. And Jim would just grab me and say, hey, let's go grab lunch and let's go, if we had festivals, he'd say, where are you going to be this weekend? Pick me up and let's hit some festivals. And, he'd be buying, pints for everybody in the beer garden and just being the guy.
Right.
And so that was kind of my, my start, and, fell in love with the community, fell in love with the people, fell in love with the movement. I laugh now that like back in those days, and I'm sure Chris can echo it, is, I would be doing tastings, at a festival or at a sponsored event, and you had to really twist people's arm to try, something that wasn't Canadian or blue back then. People just kind of weren't nearly as receptive and as eager, and it was a lot of convincing, and but it was great. I fell in love with it. Moved around to a couple breweries, and then I had a really good run at Muskoka Brewery. Lived up in Muskoka, milked that region for everything it could possibly be worth. swam in every lake and tried to climb every tree. And, you know, so I was director of marketing there and helped Muskoka go through their rebrand and the launch of, you know, the beers that we all kind of love now, Mad Tom and Detour and Legendary Oddity. And it was a blast. It was a really great time to kind of join that company, much like Chris did at Steam Whistle, when it was a really small, scrappy operation, and kind of watch it, you know, really blossom and grow. And then, to Chris's point, you know, we were traveling a lot, both of us individually, you know, discovering all these amazing breweries and beers. We both were dealing with the LCBO, so we understood the way that channel worked, and decided, hey, if we could start a business that is finding the best beers possible with cool branding in places of the world we want to travel, that'd be kind of a fun business. And, you know, it's created a lot of adventures since, and probably a few gray hairs, but a lot more smiles.
Okay, amazing. And that all started 8 years ago as far as when you guys actually made it happen?
Yeah. We incorporated, well, we started it a little bit earlier, like conceptually, but then we fully incorporated and pulled the Band-Aid off 8 years ago.
I think our actual anniversary is, I think we started the company in like September, but we count our actual anniversary as March, when we got our first check, when we made our first little bit of income. So, you know, we probably gave ourselves a bit of a runway there.
That's amazing. So it was a side hustle at first then? Or no?
No, I mean, we both kind of jumped in, you know, for the most part.
It does take time though. Like,
yeah, of course.
You know, from us talking about it, you know, the funny thing about getting an agent's license in Ontario is you can't get an agent's license until there's a brewery or winery or distillery that signs on saying, I want you to be my agent, which sounds kind of wacky. Of like, when you're visiting, and we were doing this, Mike was down in Texas, Alberts was our first person to sign the letter. This guy that he was doing mostly bottle condition stuff, wasn't he? Or?
Yeah, I was down at South by Southwest. I was going to South by Southwest.
Love it.
And I said to Chris, as we were really kind of conceptualizing this, I said, I'm coming back with a letter. I'm going down and I'm coming back with a letter of somebody saying you can import us. And I rented a car and just hit up a ton of breweries until finally Adalbert's you know, said, sure, let's give it a shot.
Yeah, and so you had to have this. You had to have a letter, someone assigning you as their agent to represent them before you could actually become an agent to represent them. So once we were grinding it out, trying to find this letter, and you know, it's tough with the U.S. guys because the 3-tier system in the U.S. and the way how litigious it is, like the U.S. guys were always kind of like, wow, if I sign on with you, then we'll be connected for life, and we're like, no, it's not like that in Canada. Like,
right.
You send another letter tomorrow to the LCBO saying, yeah, they're not my guys anymore, and we're not your guys anymore, right? Like, It's pretty easy to break up. I mean, obviously you can have contracts and whatever, and you're sunset, but you know, breaking up is easy to do. When you're an agent here, it's not like you own the rights to those brands here. Like they still own them. So then we became an agent, and then we could really start. We had a number. We seemed legitimate now, and then everything started moving.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so it started as an agent and then moved into kind of what you're doing now, which is, I guess, still agent work, but you're facilitating local contract brews, so that instead of importing beers like this, which probably wouldn't travel so well, you're brewing them fresh. Locally for the market, much like, you know, a lot of the macros, you know, Heineken brews were in every market, and I imagine Budweiser brews in every market and things like that. Which
even Stella, and Corona are going to start to be brewed in Ontario now soon too.
Let's grab another beer and we'll get into the second chapter.
I was about to say, I realized I didn't think of it, but I saw you guys splitting beers, and I was like, fuck, you guys are going to be moving faster. Which one should we go next?
You want to go Zodiac or Fresh Start?
Let's do Zodiac, because I think it's a more complimentary step.
Okay.
I like it.
Yeah.
Oh, no, babe. Sorry, so, the other fridge, all black can with green on it.
The aliens?
With the aliens, yes. With the aliens.
With the aliens.
With the aliens.
Yo, this is some of the
so
cans of all time. I don't want to cut you off, thank you. Look at this can. Look at this. This is beautiful already. But like, I just love that. Look at that. That all black lid on the all black can. It's just stunning, mate.
Yeah, and it's black lids are a pain in the ass to package.
I bet, because I noticed even, like, I guess it kind of can get scratched in the canning machine from the side.
They can get scratched, and the laser has a hard time. One of the checks to tell if the fill level is great is to bounce a laser off the lid and look for deflection of how puffed out the lid is when it goes by the laser, and the black lid eats the laser, so the thing would be like, no can, punt, and start kicking kicking the cans off the line. So we really had to work hard when we made the decision to do the black lid because we thought it was cool, and we had to work really hard to make it actually work.
That's actually, I never even thought about any challenges for that. I didn't know about the laser. That's dope. That is
well, not everyone uses that type on their canning lines, I guess, for looking for low fills. Some people use weight or whatever, but this one looks for deflection.
So this beer is fully my jam. Like, this beer, you know, is my style of IPA. You know, a little bit dry. You know, beautiful kind of, you know, hop blend of all the C's, Columbus, Centennial, Citra, you know, hazy, unfiltered. And again, that kind of dryness on the back end makes it, I think, incredibly drinkable and incredibly welcoming to that next sip.
Yeah.
This is our top selling Omnipollo SKU. It's in the LCBO. It's a top 10 IPA in the LCBO now. It's a top 25 craft beer in the LCBO. You know, it's done great for us, and it's not, you know, the cheapest IPA in the LCBO for sure, but it's really worked as a year-round beer because I think it's got great branding, obviously, by Carl Grandin, who does all of Omnipollo's artwork. But it's a super solid IPA, and it's a super drinkable IPA while still being really rewarding.
Yeah, man. I feel like when I first had this, it wasn't as hazy. I feel like it got kind of like hazier and juicier over time. Is that accurate, or am I missing?
It was always hazy. Some markets it isn't as hazy, and certainly you know, as you dial in the haze, and anyone that brews knows, like, haze can be a bit of a difficult beast to dial in when you're working with a recipe, and so there might have been some that were a little bit less hazy in the early days because, you know, you're also we were adjusting recipes for the brew house at Brunswick, but also adjusting recipes for the centrifuge, which a lot of people weren't using a centrifuge yet, and you don't have any turbidity scales, so you don't know what your range is. So you're kind of like looking at it as you go, and so there was kind of massaging the recipe to make it friendly for our system at Brunswick, and then also to dial in that turbidity and find out what's the perfect amount of haze and get it there. So there might have been some that were a little bit clear. I know some other markets, like I have seen some that are a little bit clearer than that, and I think it's, you know, it's just one of those things. Again, working with centrifuges, anyone that's done it is a bit of an art. Like, you need an operator who really, and a brew team who knows how to work with that and how to get the proper amount of haze. And then obviously stable haze versus, you know, snowflake, snow globe, you know, colloidal fallout of just like flakes everywhere and all that jazz. But which is a whole other ball of wax in this hazy world.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. No, I can imagine that would be like something to dial in. That makes a lot of sense. But this is definitely, I feel like this is just sort of like the big brother or sister of the Mazarin, as far as Mazarin.
Mazarin, yeah.
It used to be Mazarin, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually technically called Maz now.
Oh, it's just called Maz. I'm sorry. Okay.
Well, it was originally Mazarin, and Mazarin is actually one of Carl Grandin's kids' names, and he named that beer after one of his kids.
Okay.
So this beer is, you know, what Omnipollo classifies, you know, as close to a house IPA as they have. And Hanoch does a really great, you know, video on it. So Omnipollo right now is building this insane brewery just out of Stockholm in this church. They bought this church and they're converting it into this just unbelievable beer trip, which I really think is going to put it as a major European destination. And so, yeah, they've always kind of had this as their house IPA without a, kind of quote unquote house. And so now that they're building their own house, I think Zodiac's going to have a real kind of soft spot in that facility. And we've been brewing it at Brunswick and for, I guess, 4 years now. Okay. And still to this day, Omnipollo has us kind of shipping some cans, to some other facilities that they brew at around the world, because they just kind of love this as the benchmark, for this beer globally, which we've been super stoked about.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. The hop bill on this one, what are we talking?
The C's, Columbus, Centennial, and Citra.
Love it. It's definitely got a touch of that similar, like that Vermont, like little like piney bitterness, but a little bit less than the Maz. Maybe I should go side by side to check. And but I feel it's a little obviously it's an extra 6% or 0.6%. That's 5.6. That's a 6.2. So it's a little thicker in the mouthful. Similar mouthful though, super creamy. Really tropical, super fruity. It's a genuine pleasure to drink. It's just fantastic. The mouthfeel on these things is disgusting. I love it. They're really like like they're really
yeah. This one continues to be my jam. I think it always will be my jam. It's I feel super stoked that we get to brew it and sell it and represent it and do it justice, because I do love this beer.
Yeah.
So for context, so when we started Craft Brewing Company, I mean, we really started as a traditional beer import agency.
Okay.
Wanted to find kind of beers and wanted to import them and represent them. And probably one of the things that Chris and I took for granted in our, Ontario brewing days and being very involved with the OCB is, the advantages of being able to direct distribute in Ontario.
Right.
The advantages of being able to, load beer onto a truck and deliver to a bar or a restaurant or an LCBO. Whereas the way the system in Ontario is set up is anything brewed outside of Ontario has to be kind of imported as an import and distributed through the LCBO warehouse.
And access to draft.
Yeah.
A lot of craft breweries, they want to have draft, especially when you're talking to, we have a lot of American breweries in our portfolio. I was like, okay, when do we launch draft and how do we do this? And it's like, wow, pull up a chair. This is not going to be a short one. Like draft is hard to launch in Ontario. We have 4 partners you can choose from essentially. And it's super expensive and it's hard to compete on draft. So whereas when you're in Ontario, when you brew it in Ontario, then whatever format of draft, you can have 2 different types of kegs and you don't have to pay for listings. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to worry about it being old or taking time to travel here, breaking the cold chain and not having warm stored kegs or whatever. Like, you take control over that aspect of it.
Yeah. And so we represented these great brands and some of them, were already kind of brewing around the world. Like Omnipollo has this philosophy of, if they're going to launch a new market, brew in that market to be able to have fresh beer, to be able to kind of intertwine with the brewing fabric in that community. And so they already kind of had that approach. So, probably 4 years into us having the agency, 3 years into us having the agency, we had an opportunity to get involved with a brewing facility in Toronto, where we were, involved with finding the location and helping to build the team and figuring out what this facility was going to be. And that was, what is now Brunswick Beer Works. So a partner brewing facility in East York, Toronto, that brews beers for breweries that, either need excess capacity, Ontario breweries that, are bursting at the seams and need excess capacity, guys that don't have their own facility, or international brewers that, want to take advantage of having fresh beer in market and, having, better kind of distribution, access. So, we got involved with Brunswick and started to kind of, talk to our partners, guys like Omnipollo and Mikkeller, and say, hey, if we built a world-class facility, would you be open to brewing locally? And we knew with guys like that they'd be like, absolutely, that's part of our business model anyway. We're in. So we had this really great, what we think was advantage in this market of having relationships with some of the top brewers on earth, having access to building out, what is really a spectacular facility, with Ludwig Svinkels, as the master brewer, who is part of the Svinkels family. He was the brewmaster at La Trappe for 14 years, helped develop the La Trappe barrel aging program. He's an 8th generation brewmaster, you know, and for a Canadian, you know, to hear that, it's just like, that doesn't make sense. We don't have 8th generation brewmasters.
We have 8th generation people.
It's insane.
Yeah. And so, you know,
and he's a metalhead and he loves barbecue.
Yeah.
Like,
he doesn't get any better.
It was awesome.
What a bloke. Okay, so he maybe so when you, just to sort of maybe step back just a touch, when you were as an agent pre-Brunswick, as an agent in those first few years, who were you working with, and how did the relationships, because it sounds like you had the relationships with Omnipollo and Mikkeller and those type of breweries in that first few years. So who were you repping, and how did those particular relationships come about with those guys? Because it seems like they were quite impactful on the business even to this day.
Yeah, absolutely. Big Rock was number one. Big Rock out of Alberta was with a wine agency at the time.
Great folks. Yeah.
Great folks. You know, in my days at Brick Brewery, Brick and Big Rock had a licensing deal back in those days. It ended up falling apart, but they had a licensing deal where Brick was brewing Big Rock's beer for Ontario. Much like, you know, me being, you know, a 19-year-old kid and trying Waterloo Dark for the first time from Brick, which was just a dark lager that kind of blew my mind and opened my eyes to, you know, those kind of beers. My first taste of traditional ale, Big Rock's traditional ale, you know, which again, back in the day was this hop bomb. It's definitely not today based on these standards of what we're drinking, but at the time it was a super unique and different beer. And that was a real, you know, mind blower for me for sure. And a beer that really shaped me. And Chris went to Waterloo and, you know, kind of had similar experiences with that beer. So we had some pretty deep, you know, memorial roots to kind of that brewery and that beer. And then an opportunity came up to work with them in Ontario, and we were looking to start an agency, and they had volume in the province, and we had a lot of respect for them, and we jumped at it. And really they allowed us to keep our lights on, you know, for the first little bit, which was great. You know, we'll always be indebted to them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they it's funny. I'm an identical twin, and both my brother and I are in the beer industry, and we both worked at Steam Whistle. And and now he works at Big Rock. He's based out of Calgary. He moved out. He opened up the West Coast for Steam Whistle back in the day when they were opening up Alberta and then BC. And now he does their government relations biz dev for Big Rock and is based out of Calgary. But
I mean, the story of how Chris's brother Brad got the job at Steam Whistle is one of legend for sure.
Do we want to touch it?
Okay. Well, we can have a little pause and talk about that. But I mentioned I wanted to be an actor in the city. I went to University of Waterloo for theater, moved here, whatever, and I just started working at Steam Whistle, and I got an audition. I had an agent. I got an audition, and I was like, oh man, it's like on one of the days that we had production. And that time, Steam Whistle was only bottling like Tuesdays and Thursdays, so I didn't want to miss it. It was like, I need to work these hours. I need to make some money. I was like, my take home pay was $15,000, and my rent was $12,000 a year, and I needed every dollar I could get so I could actually eat and not get kicked out of the house by my now wife. And so I had this audition come up, and I was like, oh, it's right in the middle of the morning on a production day. But I had this ace up my sleeve of I have an identical twin brother who looks exactly like me. So, and he happened to be in the city sleeping on my couch doing SFA. And so I'm like, oh, here's the solution. Solution is, dude, gotta do me a solid. I'll go into work in the morning. You come at 10 o'clock for the break, wear my audition clothes. We do the old switcheroo. You put my Steam Whistle gear on. I take the audition clothes. I go do the audition. Come back at lunchtime, and he's like, "Well, like, what do you do? Like, how do you work in the production line?" I'm like, "Man, it's super noisy. Do what everyone else is doing. There's like 15 people loading bottles feeding this machine as fast as they can load bottles into the bottle washer. I'm like, just like do what everyone else is doing. Wear steel-toe boots. Everything will be fine. Watch the title credits to Laverne and Shirley." And, you know, you're good. So we do that. We pull off this perfect crime. I come back at lunch. We swap out. No one knows. Like, it is perfect. Then he goes out to the tap room at Steam Whistle, and in those days, like the tap room was a graveyard. You know, there was the Sky Dome and the ACC, and nothing else down there.
Right.
Everything south of the train tracks didn't exist. Feral cat colonies, big open brown fields of nothingness. So the retail store they were like, oh, customer. And they're like, hey, Chris, are you done work for today? And he's like, oh, no, I'm his twin brother, Brad. And they're like, here, have a pint of beer. Right. So I get off work at like 4:30. I finish polishing the floors. We used to polish everything down at the end of the workday, make it nice and clean. I come out, and he's holding court now. You know, few pints in, holding court, and he's regaling people with this caper that we just pulled off like a couple hours before that. And I'm like, dude, what? This was supposed to be a clean getaway, and now you wrecked it. You wrecked it. And we get called upstairs, and then he got offered a job. And so then as it goes, he started working the production line. The forklift driver became a delivery guy. I became the forklift driver because I worked on a farm as a kid and I knew how to drive a tractor, which made me super qualified for the forklift, which I still like. Forklift driving is probably one of my favorite jobs in the whole craft beer industry, to be honest. I love that. Fun. It was super fun. So then that was how we both got into the beer industry then. And then he started working at Big Rock. We started chatting with Big Rock about representing them here in Ontario. They were looking to fill a Southern Alberta sales manager, and we had a good rapport going with the CFO, and he's like, do you know anyone? And I'm like, I think I know a guy. And then before we got the contract done, he was working over at Big Rock.
That is insane. That is so cool. Hey man, let's get
it was super, and it was super nice. I mean, you know, when we were sitting here as a young agency thinking, all right, well, you know, we have a handful of guys that have given us their letters, you know, all cool breweries. You know, did we ever think that Big Rock would be the one that would tip the scales for us? It was never on our radar. Like, to be honest, we're like, you know, they're old. Like, they're the oldest craft brewery in Alberta. And Ed McNally is probably similar to Jim Brickman and any of those OG craft beer folks. They are fired up. They are pig-headed. They are a force to be reckoned with, and immovable objects. And in you know the spirit of that like perseverance, we had a lot of nostalgia. We had a lot of the feels for that brand, and we were like, I don't know, it might be too big for us. It might not be crafty enough for us. You know, it might not be our jam. But man, lovely people and great beers. A great roster of beers. They're actually just retiring. The first beer I ever had of theirs way back in the 90s was Warthog. They have a nice English mild called Warthog, and they just announced this week that they are retiring Warthog from the permanent roster of beers, which is my brother's favorite beer.
He's pissed. But, he's stuck up.
Well, he's forlorn. He's probably inconsolable, actually.
Maybe they'll bring it back on a special occasion. You never know.
I think they'll probably brew. They have a couple of different sized brew houses there. He'll probably be able to twist someone's arm to get it in.
A little pilot system. Okay, so that's...
You know, it's funny. It's funny when you ask though about the first brands that we got and stuff, because I mean, man, some of my most fond memories in the beer industry were, Chris and I going, all right, what breweries in Michigan do we love? Like, let's jump in the car and go visit as many of those breweries as we can in Michigan and see if we can, get some guys to agree to let us bring their beer in, right. And, all of those meetings are wildly memorable, some for awful reasons, some for, us getting stood up, some for, just hilariousness. But man, like, it really is just kind of what rounds out this industry of you can wander into a brewery and start talking beer and say, hey, we're importers from Canada, and get into a great conversation and a great couple pints. And sometimes things come of it and sometimes they don't. But some of those relationships of the no's that we got, 8.5 years ago, have still become, good friends and good colleagues in the industry. And it's something so special about this industry we find ourselves in. And it's just so great.
No, man, that's awesome. On the Michigan thing, did you end up landing any clients out there?
Oh
yeah. So
who did you end up bringing in?
So we ended up. So our very last meeting,
our very first meeting was Arcadia.
Yeah.
And
we landed them.
I mean,
who was it? Sorry,
brewery, Arcadia Ales.
Arcadia. Oh yeah.
Out of Battle Creek.
Yes.
They the brand, the brewery itself doesn't exist anymore. I think their brands still exist. I think someone bought their brands, but we met this absolute beauty,
gem of a human,
Rick Suarez, who had been like through the industry, really great guy. And we rolled into their little brew pub before they had they have a nicer facility now, or had a nicer facility. We rolled into their little brew pub, and it was our very first meeting, and it was like
in the history of our company.
It was like,
wow,
Mike and Chris Roadshow day one of let's get some beers. Let's get some more breweries going. Like, let's come back with more letters of people we can get across the finish line. And Michigan's close, obviously, for us. It's easy to get to.
Yeah.
And we rolled in, and it took a little bit warming up, but then, man, after that, we were drinking cans off the line.
Yeah, we were off to the races.
Oh yeah, and then we landed them, and they had we brought in their London Porter in here, which is I think a 99 on rate beer, absolute beauty beer, absolute beauty beer. And then we launched them in draft too in Ontario, which is another story. But that was stop one on our Michigan road show that we were doing of let's get some beers here. And we came out high-fiving. It was like we got the letter signed. We got some 3 cases of beer of different samples, and their World Beer Cup 2-year in a row winner, Serial Killer, which was like this crazy barley wine. We had like a vertical of that Rick gave us. Like, it was like we were just you couldn't erect our day. It was just banner, and that was just the beginning.
Right.
Yeah, it was beauty. It's those trips, walking into Brewery Vivant, when they were just starting out, and it was a great trip. And Michigan is such a great craft beer pocket of North America. And we went to one of my favorites was going to New Holland. New Holland was our last visit of the trip. And so Chris and I are driving to New Holland. It's summertime. We're both in shorts and flip-flops and T-shirts. And we pull into New Holland's parking lot. And, we're like, all right, let's do the change. And we both put on pants. We put on, a golf shirt. We put on a pair of shoes. And, we go walking in and we say to the receptionist, hey, we're here to see Brett Vanderkamp and, who's their president and their co-founder. She's like, yeah, no problem. I'll let Brett know you're here. So we're sitting kind of in this little waiting area downstairs, and we hear this dude upstairs, say to somebody, Susan, have I told you you're doing a great job lately? And she's like, yeah, you have. He's like, okay, great. I just wanted you to know you're doing a great job. So this dude comes down the stairs. He's in board shorts and flip-flops, wearing a backpack, and he's like, Mike and Chris? We're like, yeah, who are you? And he's like, I'm Brett. So he's their president and whatever. So we go, oh, nice to meet you, man. We'll be right back. We walk in the car. We go take our pants, shoes, and off, put on our board shorts and flip-flops. We come back, and we hash out this meeting for, the Ontario rights, at a picnic table on the front lawn at New Holland.
We had a little deck.
Drinking beers.
Yeah, we had a little deck to show them, all this. We're walking through, and we're sitting at this picnic table, having a beer, going through the deck, and it was, and he is, I mean, the whole brewery, people in Michigan are really nice anyways, but these guys at New Holland were beauties. He's like, yeah, you want to go on a tour? And then we get one of the guys, Dr. Joel, who was like one of our oldest buddies there. He comes out and we go on this tour. And like the first stop when we walk in these garage doors is a beer fridge. And it's like, he opens it up and he's like, grab a beer. This is what this one is. Let's go for a stroll, but grab a beer and get ready. So then we go for this full on tire kick everything tour of the brewery. Everything. They were building their sours program at the time. in the early stages of building their sours program before they had
the House of Funk.
Yeah, the full House of Funk with the fooders and all that. They were just starting out. They were also just rolling up Dragon's Milk, which we've had in Ontario here a handful of times.
And that was from you guys.
Yeah.
Because I had it back in the day. Yeah. That's why I'm asking, because there's a bunch of Michigan beers that I got in Ontario. We did a couple trips out there, but I remember specifically, I wanted to know if them specifically, the other one, I don't know if you're going to get to it, but Jolly Pumpkin, was that you?
Wasn't us. No, we wanted it to be us, but
someone beat you to it? God damn. Okay, so you did that, so that you really were able to like really dig into that brewery and like really make strong connections out there.
Yeah, it's we definitely left that trip and that visit being like, I think this is going to be a pretty fun business. Like, again, we both knew the beer industry, so it wasn't like we came from textiles and this was like, oh shit, this seems fun. Right. We came from the beer business, but that was really like, man, we're going to make some lifelong relationships here. Obviously, drink incredible beers, and create some great stories.
Wow, the New Holland guys, like after we do the tour of the brewery, it was Wednesday, and Wednesday was like staff barbecue day. So like, hey, go over there's another building over there where we make our shirts and all this stuff, and we repurpose the barrels that we age Dragon's Milk in their beer barrel bourbon, which is award winning. So we go over there and we roll in, and these guys, that no one knows us from Adam, but we've been told to go over there, and they embrace us. We start drinking beers, hanging out, and then the brew pub. They have a brew pub downtown. Someone shows up with a bunch of sausages from the brew pub, and they're like, "Oh, it's staff barbecue," and everyone's like, "Who's gonna barbecue?" And I was like, "Oh, barbecue! I like to barbecue." So then we're barbecuing for the staff. Brett comes over and he's like, "What the hell's going on? These Canadian guys are here as our guests, and now they're barbecuing for you guys." Like, so we're drinking beers, and then you want to tell the.
So they had a game of cornhole. Oh, you know what cornhole is, right?
Yeah, love that shit.
Yeah. So they got a game of cornhole. A couple guys are playing it, and Brett comes over to Chris and I, and he's like, me and what was that cat's name?
What was his name?
He was a gem as well. Anyway, he's like, me and our operations guy are going to take you guys on in a game. We're like, done. Okay. So the whole staff gathers around, and it becomes this, America versus, Canada kind of, thing. And Brett says, so what do you want to play for? And we go, well, we've already secured the Ontario rights. Let's play for the national rights to your brand. And he's like, in front of the whole staff, he's like, done. Let's do it. So we play, and it comes down to like, an absolute last toss.
Yeah.
And we took it down, and we won it. And like, the staff's cheering. We're high-fiving everyone. We're super loose at this point. Like, we're shaking hands with Brett. We're hugging. And it was just like, it was wild. We showed up for a noon meeting and left their brew pub at, 1:45 in the morning. They'd put us up in a hotel. And again, it was just like, man, like this is, you just can't even dream this up. Right?
It just kept going. They were like, after we did that, and we had, dinner there, and they're like, the NPR is shooting some kind of radio thing down at our brew pub. Let's all head downtown and let's go. So then we go down to the brew pub and we're drinking more beer, and we just having like an absolute amazing time. Absolute. And when we went back like a year later, it was 2 years later, I can't remember when they had a trade summit.
We took the whole team down.
We took the whole team down, drove down to Michigan with everyone, and stayed there and went down for the trade summit where they were showing all their suppliers from around the US and then the Canadians. And then like when we rolled in and we'd introduce ourselves, like, oh, where are you from? Where are you from? We're like, oh, Canada. And they're like, oh, we've heard about the Canadians. And when we rolled up at the first place, when all the suppliers are getting into this hotel, total tap takeover at their bar, and we go to the bar and they're like, okay, do you want like a pint or do you want like the super pint? And I'm like, well, what's the difference? It's like, well, a pint is 16 ounces and a super pint is 20 ounces. I'm like, well, 20 ounces is actually a pint, so let me have a 20-ounce pint. So there's this whole long table of all the different distributors of the U.S., and we come sit down with our 20-ounce pints, and everyone else has 16-ounce pints, and like, there's the Canadians. There's the Canadians.
They can see you from a mile away. Yo, that's fucking awesome. I relate to a degree because I have similar experiences because I get to talk to like legends like you guys, and when we go into breweries, we get treated extraordinarily well. People are very generous. Everything you're saying, I'm relating to in the same thing. And then all of a sudden,
100%.
this afternoon where you're supposed to just be like, oh, I've only got 45 minutes today. Guys, no worries, we'll keep it. Then 3 hours later, you're still recording the podcast. Then you get a drink afterwards. And, oh, hey, you guys want some food? That type of stuff. I just feel like everything you guys said is so indicative of the craft beer industry across the board. It doesn't matter where in the world you are. It's some of the best hospitality I've ever heard. These stories are fucking amazing. I can't believe you played cornhole for a national contract. That's insane, man.
Yeah, insane.
Fuck.
Like insane. So let's flip it. Let's flip it your way and learn just a little bit about you here. Give us just a really good kind of memorable brewery experience that is one of those ones that you kind of were just like, man, I'm in the right spot here.
That's a great.
I'm sure you've got hundreds, but
yeah. I'm trying to remember. Back in the day before the podcast, I had my friend Scott was my co-host back in the day, and the reason I'm relating a lot, when it was 2011, I started, basically the stupid selfie thing is when it all started. It was this thing in Australia my friends were doing called 365 Days of Beer, and you had to document yourself drinking 365 beers and like number them and quick 1-sentence review. And I was like, well, there's obviously not even 300 beers in the world, so it's not going to work, but let's just do it anyways. My first Canadian winter, let's go. And then obviously that kind of went a bit nuts, so we decided to go to Michigan on a trip, and that blew my mind when I first went out there and really saw what was going on. And we've been back since to beer festivals and done podcasts and stuff out there, so I'm a big fan of that. But if it was like one experience, that's a really good question, because we travel before all of this, we traveled a lot for the podcast. I'm trying to think of something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We follow your travels, and we live vicariously through you guys at times, because you definitely have some good ones under your belt.
Yeah, there's been some great trips, man, and it's basically the same. What I would have noticed, maybe as I talk, I'll think of something that's standing out, because everything is like, there's never been a bad one. Like, obviously some were a little more like, people were super like generous or had more time than others in context, but basically everyone is extremely chill and want to hang out. They want to do it. When you're coming into
the quote has been thrown out there many times, but there's just not many assholes in beer.
No, really, seriously, man. Like I can't even think of anyone I really dislike in the industry itself.
Yeah.
The actual people who own the breweries, because you think about it, like guys like yourself, you're putting your livelihood on the line. You're putting all this money up to start this dream, and it's always comes with a dream, because what's better than making stuff that everybody loves and that gets people in a good mood to have a good time? Like, you can't really go wrong. And then your experiences, like you guys, like, were just like, this is the dream. And even just coming from your own individual Canadian experiences, and then being able to take it to this next level now as as business owners, helping these breweries, you're here to help them, right? Like, I feel like that's probably maybe where we align. Like, my job is to amplify tell your story. I'm the conduit to telling the story. That's really all we do. Yeah. You guys are the conduits to bringing their product to a new market to then please and make everybody in Canada and Ontario happy. So, like, how can anyone be mad at people like us? Like, everyone wants to talk to people, like, because we're just here to offer something for it all. So I think that, and obviously beer people are just, there's this hospitality that seems to be built in. I imagine it's probably, if you're a food writer or something, they'd probably treat you pretty good too at restaurants and stuff. But maybe there's something special about beer that people are just...
Man, I remember, the first time I was going to New Belgium Brewery, in Colorado. I was going with the owner of Muskoka, the president at the time, and I decided to fly. It was the winter time that we were going, because we just wanted to go see. I mean, they are best in show, right? New Belgium.
Yeah, man.
In my opinion, all across the board are best in show. Sustainability, culture, quality of beers, attention to detail, all those things. So we were going down just to basically... kick the tires there and get the dog and pony show. And they were unbelievably gracious with their time with us. I decided to go down 3 days early, because it was winter, to go snowboard for 3 days. So I flew down on my own. I decided to go to Breckenridge, and I emailed Breckenridge Brewery. I emailed their info account. Okay. Like, just the info, and was like, hey, I'm at a brewery in Canada. I'm coming down to snowboard. Would love to pop in. Let me know if there's somebody I can just come and say hello to. That was the
When was this, by the way?
This was so we've had the company for 8 years. So probably let's call it 11 years ago.
11, it was quite a while ago. Okay, before that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I got an email back, like 7 minutes later from their head brewer being like, "I'm your guy. Text me when you get here and we'll do this." And I was just like, man, this is why the industry is so great, right?
Yeah.
Showed up, asked for the guy, we got into some beers, went for dinner, we went snowboard the next day. And again, that was just a brewery guy in Canada shooting the info account to be like, hey, anybody want to say hello? And it's your point. It's that hospitality piece that you don't get in many other businesses and many other industries.
And it's worldwide. It's everywhere. Right, I went to Romania last year. I emailed these guys at the Mikkeller brew pub in Bucharest, just like, hey, stopping by, and the red carpet got rolled out, like totally rolled out for me. And there's a few guys that I was with. Total red carpet, total. Your hand couldn't even go in the pocket, right? Like it was just everything's taken care of. They're happy to have people there, and they know it's one of those reciprocal things, right? Like do good and good will come back to you when you travel anywhere else. And everyone, there's so many people in the industry that are like us that, when they travel, they want to be able to have great beers and learn great stories and meet great people. And they know that it just, in the grand scheme of things, it all just comes around and goes around.
Yeah.
My friend Giles in Vermont calls it beer karma. So he always beer karma. Every time I went down there, we go to Vermont a lot because from Montreal it's 2 hours to Burlington direct. And so we go there often. We've got a bunch of really good friends there now. And every time I went down, he used to own a ski hostel in an area called Warren, Vermont, near the I don't know which mountain it was. I can't remember, but it's sort of like in the middle of the state. But it's a ski hostel with an amazing beer bar. So I'd always just go down there and I'd bring him Canadian beer and he would just give me Trillium and Treehouse and just all this crazy shit. I'm like, dude, like, how do you get this stuff? He's like, it's beer karma, bro. Like, people come through, they give me stuff, I give them stuff. You don't really worry. Like, beer, exactly the way you guys said, let it flow. The beer just flows. Yeah. And it's something that I've noticed. It's almost like, and I've tried to really take that on. I try not to be like a tight ass with anything. It's sort of like, if I can share, obviously I have to take some pictures and do content with stuff. But if I got extras and I can hook somebody up, I'll always do that. Obviously, it was more fun before when we were traveling, and I could always bring stuff for people, particularly over the border, because now it's a bit more difficult. But yeah, that beer karma is a real thing, man. It's really funny to hear you guys tell all these stories because it really just almost sounds like a more extreme version of the stuff that we have always experienced. And I always thought that we were in a somewhat unique position where we were traveling beer podcasts and people always treated us super, super nice because we're just trying to tell their stories. And they're exactly the same. You can't put your hand in your pocket. They're just like, no, you want some food? You want that? Here, take this to go. And you want a t-shirt? You want a hoodie? Like, I'm like, Jesus Christ, guys. Yeah. Like, thank you for that. You don't have to be that. Like, it's a lot sometimes. Like it's beautiful. I appreciate it, but I really think there's that people here have that mentality. I don't think anyone's ever no one's really like, everyone's just letting it flow, and it really shows that the energy that it's given and taken. It's so beautiful.
Because we love to travel, what's a destination you've done in the last couple of years that you really blew you away?
It almost feels like you guys have always done everything that we've done. The last couple, so we work with tourism offices. Is one way we've been able to continue to travel, because otherwise, if you're paying out of pocket every time for that, it becomes redundant. So we worked with the tourism of Colorado. We went out there. That was beautiful. We did all through the state. So we went to Breckenridge, and that's why I was asking where, because we went to Breckenridge Brewery and we interviewed the head brewer out there, Blake. So I wasn't sure if you knew him or not. I don't think he was there 11 years ago. But he was a G. Took us up on the roof. Just kept playing. We had to go to Colorado Springs for the next meeting or whatever, and he was like, "Oh, you have to go." Like, I don't know, man. These guys like booked the whole shit. We have to go. Like, I didn't want to go because he just wanted to keep plying us with beer. It was amazing. Like on the top of the roof of the brewery, looking at the mountains. Like that was actually one of the best experiences. Just bringing out all this like food just kept coming. You're like, here's some wings, here's some mac and cheese, just coming in the middle of the podcast. Like people just bringing them over and stuff. I'm like, damn. And
their beers, for what they are, delicious, pounders. They're delicious pounders, man. Like they make just some beautiful beers.
Yeah. And even he was
Did you get to Great Divide?
We did not. So the problem with the tourism things is that you don't get a lot of independent choice, which is the bad part.
Right.
So they set up, you tell them, but the tourism folks don't really understand beer. So they don't really, they'll send you to places. I'm like, why'd you send me here? I would never come here. No shade, but there's some places I'm like, my audience doesn't care about this type of stuff. So we didn't always get, we went to GABF. That was the big thing we went, and this was 2018. We went to Casey, and we actually interviewed Troy Casey from there. He was actually from Ontario. That was definitely a highlight because that was a bonus thing that we kind of just finessed on the way. But yeah, we didn't get to Great Divide. We went to New Belgium in Fort Collins with the tourism lady, but we didn't get to interview them. We just got to hang out there and check it out. We did Odell. That was pretty cool. Odell was pretty big.
Odell's is tops.
Money, eh?
Like I say to a lot of people, if you're going to go to Fort Collins, you're obviously going to go to New Belgium, but Odell's is just fantastic. Yeah,
Fort Collins is probably our favorite city in Colorado for sure. It was incredible. That was definitely a fave. The one biggest surprise, we worked with Tourism Virginia in 2019 in the summer. Virginia was insane. It was just like a quick 5-day trip where Colorado was like 12 days. This was like 5, and the idea was we do like a media trip or whatever. Then if we did well and the response was good, then they would bring us back, and they wanted to do it. And then COVID happened right as last year when we were supposed to go back again. But Virginia was amazing. Alexandria we went to, which was cool. Richmond specifically, Richmond was out of control. It was kind of like the Toronto Montreal of the state, where like that. I don't know if you guys have been down there. Yeah, you did. Yeah, did you go to Richmond? Did you go to like the and like Richmond's just insane. How crazy was Richmond? Like in Scott's Edition, that whole area with like what's the one that starts with V? There's a brewery, Vasen, like Vale Vasen. There was Ardent. Another one that started with S up. I've forgotten them more now. But there was just in this whole area, there was like 10 or 15 breweries.
Yeah, the Vale spot there is so cool, and there's that. I went to it, so there's that crazy beer bar that was for years rated one of the top beer bars. In the
we went there in Mekong.
And it's in that Thai restaurant.
Mekong.
And it's in like that Thai restaurant.
And the answer is door. Yeah.
Yes.
Dude, they had Bellwoods on tap when we went there. I couldn't believe it. This shit was crazy. Yeah. And the food, we were stuffed. And we were watching the guy come with the big ass fucking things, dropping food off. And we're like, we have to get some food now. Like, this is ridiculous. Yeah. They just had everything. The answer next door was amazing too. Yeah, Mekong was one of the coolest places I think I've ever been. As far as like how random is it? Like you said, it's like a Vietnamese or Thai restaurant. And it was just amazing. So crazy.
Yeah.
That was a big one. And we went down further to Norfolk and Virginia Beach. The Commonwealth Brewery down there, that was amazing. That was really, really cool stuff. They had a valet to park there at a craft brewery, and you had to pay. So you went and parked in a side street just on principle. Like that didn't feel very craft beer to me. So change. Yeah. But the beers were amazing, so it was definitely worth going there.
Well, Virginia's interesting because you get all these amazing independents, and then they also made such a play to be the eastern kind of location for so many big breweries. So you got Ballast Point, you got Stone, you got Green Flash, not Green Flash anymore, but those three that all kind of opened in Virginia under great tax incentives and everything. And so they really, it's an interesting one. It's a super interesting one. I went down on a trade mission, down there, and it was. Did
you go to O'Connor?
It was action packed.
Oh, there you go.
O'Connor, yes, I was there.
Yeah,
I have a patch on my jacket.
Yeah, there you go. Kevin, we interviewed Kevin O'Connor. He was a champion. They're the second biggest brewery in Virginia. And he was the loveliest dude. And he was like, I feel like they got like, their beers were so impressive. And he was kind of like, I feel like people just like front because we're like the biggest guys. And we make the stuff that's crushable, the gateway. But like, like this stuff is fire too. And like, he was just super cool. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
And such a cool spot. Yeah, their brewery was such a cool little spot with that little kind of event area. And you know what? Yeah, that one stood out for me. I got a patch and I immediately sewed it on my jacket that has all my patches. I really love that brewery.
Very cool. It's great stuff. But that whole region was super impressive to us. I mean, obviously Vermont is the greatest place on the planet. I want to buy a property out there at some point. It's phenomenal. Even though it's America, and America is a little bit of a strange place right now, but
But Virginia's for lovers, right?
It sure is. It was we loved it. It was so good. And San Diego was one of the other places that. And San Francisco. The last trip to the States, aside from Vermont, we went to San Francisco. We have clients. We have a social media agency, so most of our clients are in the tech world in Silicon Valley. So we went out there to see clients, and my girlfriend's like the account manager, so I got to kind of like chill a little bit more and got to go. I got some friends because I do music, so I got some rap friends out there. So I went and met with him. We went around Oakland to the breweries and stuff, and we went to Russian River out there, which was beautiful. I imagine.
Oh, nice.
Do you guys check that out?
No, it's very, very high on my list.
But I remember where I was standing the first time I had Russian River supplication at the
Craft
Brewers Conference. They were pouring it, and I was like, this is what a New World sour is supposed to taste like. Like this beer is awesome, and I immediately turned around, went back and got another helping of it, and I was like, this is it. Like this is the real deal. This is amazing, finely crafted beers.
I'll tell you a thing about Chris when it comes to, Chris is very tough to impress in many different aspects, right?
Okay.
Like, so when Chris is, excited or impressed with something, you're like, oh, okay, like
we're
I
onto
need
something.
to try this. And so we were at the Craft Brewers Conference together, and they had this Russian River on tap, and I got something else, and he got that, and he was like, oh fuck, like this is unbelievable. And I was immediately like in line right away to be like, okay, now I have to try it. If he's stoked about it, then this has to be great. And it really is one of the all-time greats. I mean, they obviously have so many great beers, but Supplication is pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I wanted to mostly just drink Pliny on tap from the source. And
for sure, as you do.
We went through Napa. My girlfriend has a wine, spirits, and coffee kind of account that's like the sister account to BAOS. When we travel, we cover all liquid things. Yeah. And so we went through Napa, Sonoma for a weekend because we've always wanted to get out there. And they had these even just this super popular burger joint on the side of the road. Nothing crazy, kind of like an old school dining thing. And their tap list was mind blowing. And they just had Pliny sitting there when we to try and get it. Obviously, for people like us out east is so difficult. Not even to mention on the Canadian side. Like even if we were in Vermont, it's really hard to get. So just being able to just cruise around Napa Valley and just pull in and get some food, and she could get some fire local wine, and then they just got Pliny right there. It was just glorious.
Yeah, it doesn't get much better.
It really doesn't, man. It's probably it's got to be top 5 of all time. All styles.
Yeah,
it's just
that's awesome, man.
Not even to mention their other stuff. I know I feel like we're geeking out over our own beer trips and stuff. I don't want to get too far away from. No. We also need another beer here. Yeah, man. What are we doing next, boys? Yeah. Talk to me. What are we feeling? So many options.
Well, what else do we have left on the?
Well, Chris and I both shipped you a box, and neither one of us knows what we shipped.
Yeah, it was funny when we shipped the box. Mike shipped the box on the 90s. Back to the 90s? Yeah, let's do back to the 90s.
Back to the 90s? Okay.
The Lervig back to the 90s. Mike shipped the box, and then he shipped the box. And then I was like, oh, man, did he ship the box? I better ship a box, too. So then I shipped the box. Okay. And then when I was, printing the shipping label, I saw that he had just shipped you one. I was like, well, I've already printed the shipping label. So
I was like, why not? It's called back
the day before. And did they both show up today?
They both showed up at the same time, so I went down, but I didn't get 2 different tracking numbers. It was the same one.
Yeah, because it was.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was the one tracking number. So when I came down, I'm like, 2 of these. I'm like, oh, okay. Dope. Maybe I'm like, well, these are both pretty heavy. I'm like, we don't need that many beers for the podcast. Maybe these guys went a little hard. And I opened them up, and it was almost identical, but it had a few little ones that were different, but it was almost identical. So I was saying to Mike, I've got a few beer media friends that I have to send some stuff to anyway. So some of the excess, whilst as much as I would like to keep it, I was like, maybe there's more value in shipping the boys a couple of cans of some other stuff, and they'll post it on their accounts. And some of them are here in Quebec, and one's in Ontario, who's our lead blogger. So might as well get some value for that fun fuck up, which I love. It's the best of all time. This one, Craig, your sales rep out there in the Southwest, was super excited about this one. Tell us about this one. This is one from Lervig, so we're switching it up a bit. And this thing,
Lervig's Lervig's in Stavanger, Norway.
Norway, okay.
You know, yeah. So they're in Norway. They are. They're actually one of their brewers is Canadian. It's from Saskatchewan. A guy David Graham, who we've just fallen in love with. And Mike Murphy is their head brewer, who's an American guy, who's obviously West Coast influenced.
Okay.
Super cool brewery. We got a hold of them through Omnipollo. So Omnipollo was like, look, these guys are doing some really cool shit. You should probably chat with them. So we all kind of got put in touch with each other. We haven't done a ton with them, but we've thrown down some pretty great beers with them. This one we really wanted you to try. It's a bit oxidized now, but as a red IPA, it still holds up quite well.
Yeah.
We really wanted to do something kind of different and interesting with them, and we got on a call just like this. And Mike Murphy, their brewer, was like, look, man, I just want to go back to the beers that I fell in love with in the 90s that were all red. Every single one of them had a red hue to them.
Yeah.
I want to put some hops in that I really like, and let's do kind of an old school red IPA. And we canned it, and we just fell in love with it, and we've been kind of in love with it ever since. It's a really, really interesting beer. These guys from Lervig, we kind of swung for the fence a little bit with them. They came to visit us, and we were already in talks with them, and they said, let's kind of get together and have a chat. So we had a couple beers in a patio, and then they said, we're gonna kind of head down to Buffalo. They think they're doing a collab with Thin Man down in Buffalo.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh,
and they said,
great. Yeah.
Yeah. Thin Man's great. So they went down to do a collab with them, and they said, we're coming back to Toronto on Monday. Let's get together and chat just about if we can work together and what this might look like.
This was recently, wasn't it?
Yeah, this was pretty recent.
So I spoke to the dude on Instagram, and he said he was just leaving Toronto or something. So I think I was speaking to them at the time because Craig gave me one of the beers, their milkshake IPA or something.
Yeah.
And I was talking.
Yeah, they did a Hell's Yeah. Yeah, we did a Hell's Yeah.
What was it? What was the one that the
Freak Shake
one that we did?
Oot Na Boot.
Oot Na Boot.
Yeah.
Oot Na Boot was another beer.
So I get a text from them on the Sunday saying like, hey, so let's get together tomorrow morning and meet. Tell us what we need to bring. And so on the Monday was the Raptors NBA parade in Toronto. Okay. So I said to them, look, absolutely, let's meet, bring a pair of running shoes and nothing else and meet me at this address. And they were just like, yeah, great. I think they thought we were going to go see LCBOs and beer stores. I ended up taking them to a buddy's rooftop downtown that was on the parade route and was just like, let's see how this plays out. So about, 4 beers in, watching the parade go by, the city's going crazy. Everybody's loving life. Their director of export puts his arm around me and just goes, I think this relationship's going to work out just fine. And I was like, all right, man, I didn't know how this was going to go, but I wasn't missing this parade and I figured you'd think it was kind of cool. So, let's do it.
Once in a lifetime, I guess.
Yeah, so we've been throwing down a couple beers for them. We're working to get something in the LCBO, but for the time being, we've just been, selling their beers through our online store. So our online store is bodega.beer, www.bodega.beer.
Link in the description.
So our bodega is, what's that?
Link in the description.
Look in the description.
Yeah.
Check there right now. It's right there. Continue.
So,
Continue.
Yeah, we've been throwing down brews for them and selling them through our online store, and people have just been loving them. People have been really, really loving their super weird kind of trippy designs, the styles. We've done a West Coast IPA, this red IPA, and a dry hopped Helles. And like I said, this one, is starting to get a little bit oxidized, but the beauty of the kind of the red malt forward IPA is, to me, even at this stage, it still kind of contributes to it. You start to get a bit of that raisin, a bit of that kind of plum, and with their hop bill, it's an interesting beer. So because we don't have many red IPAs in Ontario, full stop.
No.
It's got a real novelty for us for sure.
Yeah.
But with this one, when we did Oot Na Boot, it was the same brainstorming process of we were sitting around and we said for Oot Na Boot, we were on a call and we were like, you know what we really haven't had in a long time is one of those OG piney hop bomb dank old school IPAs. And let's do that. That sounds awesome. And it was awesome. Like it was just
felt like you were chewing on pine needles. It was great.
Oh, it felt like you were going back to the beginning of craft beer when IPAs were coming out. Like it was just like everything to the extreme but old school hops, old school hop bill. It was awesome.
We should brew that one again, man. I love that beer.
It was a great.
Which one was that called? Sorry.
Oot na Boot.
Oh, the Oot na Boot. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Okay. So it was kind of like a West Coast.
Yeah.
Mostly?
As West Coast as you could possibly get. Yeah.
OG West Coast. Yeah.
Okay. Kind of like, was it like, what sort of ABV? We talking like more like Sierra?
I think it was probably
six.
High sixes, probably
6 something, and it didn't have. I can't remember the hop bill off the top of my head, but obviously it wasn't like your Citras of the world. It was like Cascade and Centennial, and like it was getting into like those old American hop, the first American hops that were coming out, and that defined kind of the West Coast style.
Totally know the vibes. No, that is super sick, and I think Lervig are just such an interesting. It makes sense for your portfolio when you've got something like Mikkeller and then Omnipollo, and then now these guys. It's like up there with like the more fun and interesting European breweries, because Europe isn't exactly known for their zany North American type stuff, and these guys just fit the bill across the board from their labels to the approach to beer. Even though the point where this is back to the '90s, but like you said, Hell's Yeah, which Craig sent me recently. Was fantastic. A nice little dry hop lager. The Freak Shake, the milkshake one was super great.
Yeah.
I've had a couple others from them, and everything I've had has just been interesting, like really interesting beers. And it's a perfect addition to what you guys are doing, and it's something that is interesting to the scene out here. Like everyone who's it's an import, but you've been able to do it because you brew these here, right? This is brewed here.
We brew them all here. Yeah,
it's perfect. Because this is not the stuff.
And when you look at their region, right? So like Stockholm, is a great city. It's a fairly, I would say, it feels a little bit more conservative, a little bit more prim and proper, a little bit more buttoned down, but it's a great city. Copenhagen, has a bit of that kind of weirdness to it that we like in cities when we travel, like
a lot of grit.
Something that's a bit grittier and weirder and more artistic. Okay. And then Stavanger is like this sea town.
Okay.
It's like it's this sea town that is by no means a big city. It's as picturesque as it can possibly be.
You're tickling the fjords. There's glaciers like nearby.
Like it is just a whole different kind of realm. So again, for us, we love what they're doing. We love the beers. We love the guys, but there's a real charm to where they are too that makes it a real appeal to get there. And they do a beer festival once a year. So we've been to the Mikkeller, beer celebration. We've kind of tried to make that a habit, and it's an animal of a European beer festival. It is fantastic, and it's awesome, and it's really big. The one that they do in Stavanger that David from Norway, puts on from Lervig, much smaller. It's invite only. All of the same amazing breweries you would hope to get at those big ones, but in a really small, unbelievably picturesque venue that just is, it's incredible.
That sounds so awesome. I mean, it's so cool that you guys have been able to get out there. Like, that's some regions I haven't been back to Europe since I've been into beer. We were supposed to go last year, but you know how that goes.
Well, this kind of sounds like we need to travel somewhere together.
Yeah,
mate, you say less. As soon as we can, I would love to, because you guys are doing it. You guys are doing it right. Like all you like. Those are some crazy ass stories of you're going to the right.
Well, and you have to put the Mikkeller beer celebration. Like if you've
up there.
Like, every beer person out there, if you love beer, that has to be a milestone birthday or whatever. You got to make that. You have to go to it. Like, it is the best beer festival we've ever been to.
And Copenhagen's an amazing city too.
Yeah,
amazing city.
I've heard a ton about it.
It's like one of our absolute favorites.
Isn't there like some sort of island just off it, and the island was where weed was legal or something like that?
Yeah.
Well, there's an island with like no rules, no laws. Like, it's
no
an
laws.
island that was
the lawless society. Yeah.
It was a military base at the.
Is it called Christian Town?
Christian town, where they basically, it was a military base that they kept as like outside of Denmark's laws, so they could do whatever they wanted there, essentially. And then it was stormed by a bunch of hippies and taken over, and they've turned into this arts island. But yeah, there is a black market there where, you walk down the black market and whatever you want to buy is there. But then there's people that build houses, artists that build houses, and they're out there painting, sculpting, doing whatever. They've built a house out of scrap wood. They're living their best life, and it's a trip, man. It's a total trip.
Sick. I want to see that.
And it's right around the corner from Nijhaven, which is the most picturesque kind of aspect of Copenhagen. Most pictures you see of Copenhagen is this waterway, and on both sides of sailboats and all these different color bars and stuff, and it's right by that. So that's where kind of everybody goes to get your pictures and say, I've been to Copenhagen. And then around the corner is this like lawless island, which is wicked. That's
so cool, man. And the best part, I guess, they got all the fire beer there. I guess it's like all the Mikkeller bars and stuff are all around there. That's where they're from.
Yeah, Bauhaven. Like there's Mikkeller has a sour cellar, a sour house, Bauhaven, which is out near, I guess, the cruise docks or the shipping docks. It's out on a bit of a point, and they have shipping container restaurants nestled around it. You can get everywhere you want on a bike. They have this great bike program there, but it was absolutely beauty. Like biking out to the Bauhaven and drinking some of their cellar beers and some of their exclusive beers out there was just a dream, and it was beautiful.
Yeah, if I had to sum it up, so we obviously knew prior to going out there that Mikkeller is a big deal in Europe. They're obviously a big deal in the San Diego area, and they had a brew pub in New York and whatever. But that's kind of really all we knew. Is they've got cool designs, they make great beers, and they're kind of a big deal in Europe. The first time we went to Copenhagen, we decided to get involved with that bike rental program and try to bike to all of their locations in Copenhagen. And they've got now, I don't know, it's somewhere between 15 and 20. So some of them are, really cool tap rooms and beer bars. Some of them are all sour houses. Some of them are
doodle
basement, weird nightclub kind of places, but that have unbelievable beer selection. They've got now 2 ramen restaurants that don't have a lick of English in the restaurant, and it's all Mikkeller beers brewed to pair with ramen.
With vending machines in them and like wacky.
Yeah, they've got that Bauhaven, like Chris said, the destination. They've got, so you kind of spend about 2 days biking around to all of the Mikkeller spots that are all super fucking cool, right? Like there's really none, in my opinion, there that have jumped the shark of, that's kind of feels corporate or whatever. Like they really are all unbelievable. And us leaving kind of those first couple days there, we were like, oh, I get it. Like I get why these guys are, as cool as they are in Europe and doing what they're doing, because they're doing just such cool, different things, and they own it. They really own it. They're super cool.
That's so dope, man. I love that you guys were able to connect with them. So the order of who you connected with, I guess that the main ones that that I guess we're focusing on tonight are Omnipollo, Lervig, and Mikkeller as well. Like, what was the order of how you connected with these guys? So I guess it sounds like it started with Omnipollo. Is that correct?
Yeah. I was at the Craft Brewers Conference. One of them in I don't know which one it was. I picked up a magazine. Chris and I were thinking about starting the agency. I was still with I think Muskoka at the time, and there was this article of the top 30 IPAs to try before you die, and Nebuchadnezzar was one of those IPAs. And I saw the can. For anybody that's never seen the Nebuchadnezzar can,
yeah, it's really cool looking. The spirals, right? The black and white spirals.
Yeah, so the Nebuchadnezzar can is, that kind of deconstructed, American flag kind of,
The original bottle label had the stars collected down at the bottom. So the stars had fallen off the
flag.
The stars had fallen off this part of the flag and were like collected down here on the old school bottle label, which is like everyone was bottle still then. Yeah. They were all bottle.
So I read this article and, saw this label and was like, man, this is unbelievable. And I Googled them and emailed their info account and was like, hey, I have an agency in Canada, man, the design looks unbelievable, would love to chat. And lined up a Skype call with Hanok, who is their founder. And at the time, again, they were a very, very small operation. And we kind of hit it off and we're like, let's try something out. And so the first beer we imported to the LCBO was Nebuchadnezzar in a bottle.
Okay.
It's a double 99 on rate beer. It is as epic as it gets. It's actually inspired by Pliny, which is funny.
Nice. It's a little high, right? Isn't it like 9?
No,
it's not.
It comes in
8.5.
Yeah,
8.5. My bad. Okay.
Yeah. So, we brought it into the LCBO. It came in a bottle format. It was imported because we didn't have Brunswick at the time. It came in very expensive. People raced out to buy it. But by the time it hit shelves here, it was probably 3 months old. And people were like, okay. Like, might not live up to the hype that I kind of thought, but super cool bottle. And it sold out fairly quick. But, the online reviews weren't through the roof. So the first time we brewed it here in Toronto was a pretty special day for us to be able to drink, fresh Neb the way we remembered it, here. So anyway, so Omnipollo was first, all started with that Skype call. And then Mikkeller kind of was like, hey, because it's such a tight-knit community there, Mikkeller was like, I hear you're doing some pretty cool stuff with Omnipollo, we should chat. So we started chatting and we do a bit with them. And then Lervig was the same. Omnipollo said to them, like, hey, if you're ever looking at Canada, here's the guys you need to chat with. Then ironically, they had a Canadian brewer that we really hit it off with. We really, really like the guy. And he's one of the sharpest brewers we've ever met. And it kind of just, we're in this mode now where we're kind of getting those kind of calls or those introductions fairly frequently. I guess the only challenge is in Ontario, we're somewhat limited to, if we don't get a listing at the LCBO, it's tough to take it to scale. Right. We can sell, 20 hect batches through our online store pretty quickly, but unless you really get an LCBO listing in this province, it's really tough to ramp up, big volumes. So, we're working on a couple things and we've got a lot of buy-in from the LCBO and a good relationship with them to introduce a few more breweries to the stable. But yeah, that's kind of, how it's kind of snowballing now. Omnipollo really is our knight in shining armor. They're continuously ranked kind of a top 50 brewer on earth. They got as high as 6. And they open up a lot of doors for us and give us a lot of street cred. And I think because of the quality of the beer that we're making for them, they vouch for us, pretty steady.
That's amazing. So do you lead, to say if a new brewery was wanting to come out and work with you guys and come out here, do you typically lead with brewing locally, or is it sort of like you can still import their, farmhouse and stouts and sours and stuff, but then brew the hops and stuff locally? Or how does that typically work in those discussions?
I mean, we still import a bunch of stuff. Like Flying Dog, we had Gonzo in this past year. It's coming in again this winter. Yeti out of Great Divide.
Yes.
So, it depends. It depends on the comfort of the brewery, right? Like, you got a couple of buckets, and obviously importing is still an option. And depending on the formats, like the usually where it goes is like, all right, this is where we'll start. And then when we talk about label compliance, packaging compliance, trade compliance, shipping compliance, all this, it all of a sudden becomes, all right, well, this is a bit of a checklist that we're putting forward. And once we get through it the first time, then it's easy to do, but it's a checklist. Right. Whereas when we have partners, so we're going to be launching Heavy Seas, Tropicana here. They're out of Maryland, Baltimore, and they were originally an import brand for us, and they got the PO from the LCBO, and it was, they were hitting a roadblock on the shipping compliance, and they couldn't get it past the finish line. So then we were like, all right, well, we can pivot. We can brew it and market here. And then if we brew it and market here, we can do this, this, and this. We can do some draft if we wanted. We can do a test batch of something else, like their loose cannon. We can do a handful of other things that we couldn't do if we were importing you for this PO. So we pivoted them as part of that. But we still, I mean, it's options. It's whatever the partner feels comfortable with, and we certainly, we put the pros and cons up to everyone, and then they can make a decision on which they feel most comfortable with. Obviously, during the pandemic, it's a little bit harder because a lot of the breweries like to send their brewmasters or a head brewer down to be there as part of the first brew and just massage it through the system. I mean, the reality is when you've got a guy like Lervig with his hand on the tiller and one of the best brew teams you could ask for.
I was just going to say that about Lervig. Like Lervig really does, cut through a lot of that hesitation.
Yeah.
Right. We would never pigeonhole a brewery into brewing local if they didn't want to. But when they kind of say, well, not sure how comfortable we would feel giving our recipe to just some brewery, and we say, no problem. Head brewers Ludwig Svinkels was, brewmaster at La Trappe for 14 years. They're like, oh, and I'd have access to be able to chat with him and pick his brain. And it's like, yeah, of course you would. So that generally cuts through a bit of that clutter.
Interesting. So you've got a few little aces, like you said. You've got the three of these brands we've been talking about tonight a lot, which already are a cosign enough if, based on their worldwide reputation. If they trust you, then it's like, okay. And then you've got Ludwig holding it down, the guy brewing some of the finest Trappist ales in the world. And I imagine that's probably one of the hardest things to do. And when you're a master brewer, these European cats, like, they're a whole other, situation.
Oh, so, yeah, they are.
I got to interview Rudy, who was the master brewer at Rodenbach. And I know jack shit about Belgian beers. I know fucking nothing. And I didn't even like Flanders Red. And we went to this brunch. They sent us to this media thing where we were basically, there was one or two other people that were beer media, and the rest were the Montreal Gazette and just food writers and stuff. So they did this this was probably 2 years ago. And they did this fancy ass brunch or lunch thing at this French restaurant downtown where they paired the three Rodenbach beers that they were bringing in. I guess it's the classic, the Grand Cru, and one of the vintages. And they paired it with these French foods. And they happened to seat me next to Rudy, which was pretty convenient. And I already had a podcast set up with him later that evening. But we sat down. He'd never tried the beers paired with the food. And he lost his mind. So he was super happy. And I was like, what the fuck is this? This is amazing. And talking to him, I was like, oh, wow, this is another level. It's kind of all the things that you guys were talking about and the experiences that we've mostly shared. You guys obviously have got the European stuff, which I've never tackled as a beer nerd yet. But talking to him in detail, I'm like, my God, there is this, it's a whole other, bless you, it's a whole other level of dedication to the craft and what they have to do to make these things. It's so fascinating. It's not even to discredit any North American or Western sort of brewers. Once you're talking to these European dudes, like you said, this Ludwig's 8th generation, which is even comprehending that is mind blowing. And then this dude Rudy, this brewery's 200 years old. Rodenbach's 200 years old, and he's the 8th master brewer or something like that as well. Something like that. And he'd been doing it for 20 something years, and you live on the property and just hearing those stories, I felt I don't know if I hope I did it justice to even ask them the right questions. I probably came from a different perspective.
You really feel when you're chatting with those cats that your ears just perk up quite a bit more and you're listening so much more intently because you're these guys are just on a different level. It is great. That European, just tradition of the occupation is unbelievable.
And we'll get there. I mean, we are, even though you have some old school beer name families out here in North America, we'll get to multi-generational brewmasters at some point, but it doesn't have the same clout. It doesn't have the same kind of, as a profession, it doesn't have the same kind of I'm a brewmaster is basically being a surgeon, right? you're up on a baller status in Europe.
Yeah.
And here it's like, I'm a brewmaster at a craft brewery. It's like, okay, so you failed out of university and your hobby you managed to turn into a job. Like,
right.
It just doesn't it doesn't have the same clout. But we'll get there. I mean, there's super interesting things happening here across, like, whether it's beer, cider, every wine, spirits. Like, there's a lot of really interesting things happening, and a lot of, like, momentum building. Even though we aren't like Europe. The good thing is Europe's monkey on their back was, the multi generations that they had, is a lot of people were like, my goal is to make the most stupendous pilsner in the world. I have a finite goal. Like, my goal is to uphold the family tradition of making the best lager, the best pilsner, the best whatever. So innovation, that's where Europeans have been learning from North Americans, but then also they've been developing their own innovation. But, breaking through that ceiling of the Reinheitsgebot, breaking through that ceiling of, if you want to make it as a brewery, you have to sell a bunch of lager, because lager is 85% of the beer sold in the world, and you're in the lager central. Like, they have an uphill battle. Even though they have the pedigree, they have an uphill battle of breaking through and doing interesting shit. Whereas North America, it's the opposite. Everyone's doing interesting shit, and now you see some of them trying to do lagers or doing pilsners or getting into lagers on the craft brewery side of things, to try to find a little bit more depth and breadth to their portfolio, so that they do have every drinking occasion possible. So I'm not just like, a couple of hoppy beers with the boys. Now I've got crispy boys that I can have while I'm watching the hockey game from my favorite brewery too.
Yeah. And you know what? And on that note, I mean, we thoroughly enjoyed your chat with Matt Tweedy, and Tooth and Nail's obviously doing, some phenomenal things. But, in that really interesting hybrid that's happening now of Europe and North America, I mean, they're an epitome of that. They're doing just such interesting and great lagers and pilsners. But that chat, I have to say, kind of made my ears perk up. I mean, he's a great guy to listen to. He knows his shit. He's making great beers. And that's such an interesting hybrid of I'm not just making, New England IPAs. I want to really experiment, with our style of pilsner and how it works. And, that's a really exciting, I think, kind of slice of the pie right now in craft beer of, the innovation on the old world styles. For people that do it right is super cool.
Like Bim at Godspeed.
Bim, yeah.
I mean,
great example.
He is really cranking some very, very interesting styles and ranges of lagers. It's absolutely, it's fascinating because, obviously my pedigree of coming from Steam Whistle, we did one thing really, really well, and we made a Pilsner, right? And that was like the training wheels of the craft beer renaissance that was happening in Ontario in the late 90s, early 2000s, of like, craft breweries weren't just guys with leather elbows on their tweed jackets drinking English bitters and things like that, that were made locally, or dark ales or whatever. A Pilsner could be made, a lager could be made. And then you saw this huge explosion, obviously tenfold explosion of breweries over the last 20 years, doing a multitude of different things. And now you see US, Canada, this rediscovery of classic styles and lagers and pilsners, and like refining back down to, hey, it doesn't have to blow your mind. It doesn't have to break the sound barrier with IBUs. It could just be something you want to crush. Because I'm sure you've seen, you read these articles out of the interviewing 15 brewmasters of the U.S. What's your guilty pleasure? And all 15 are like some adjunct lager, right?
Every time.
So clearly, they're even a craft beer nerd wants to have a nice, dry, crushable lager out there. Adjunct, yes, whatever. Like, I mean, adjuncts don't mean anything anymore. Like you look at what people are adding into craft beers. There's more adjuncts going into craft beers than the big guys at the macro breweries ever thought would be an adjunct in a beer, right? Like,
thanks to Omnipollo.
Exactly.
Thanks to Omnipollo and their pastry stouts, like,
right?
You know,
changed the game.
Yeah. It's great. It's crazy. But BIM is doing like at God's. I think BIM is really discovering some really interesting lagers, styles of lagers.
Yes.
Both old school and new reimaginations of it. And he's such a nice guy. I mean we've talked about this. There's a lot of nice people, but he's a great person, and
he's in it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he really gives a fuck, and it's a beautiful thing to see how much he cares. And I haven't seen him for a little bit, but my brother literally lives 50 meters from the brewery, so
no way,
like local. So since I used to be in Toronto like once a month, but now we're not as much. We're just shipping beers between each other. I'll get him some stuff from here. He's one of our photographers, so I'll send him some stuff and vice versa. He knows he's good mates with Craig as well, and I got him to get me the two they did recently, the Sklepnik, the one with the stainless version and the wood version. Like, that shit was some of the most incredible things I've ever had, period, that I can think of, because all these brewers, BIM, but even dudes out here in Quebec, in the last maybe 2 years, there's been this like pilgrimage to the Czech Republic, and they go out there and they'll go to Pilsner Urquell and they'll lose their fucking minds and they'll see the caves and they'll be like, oh shit. And now, like, BIM is importing Czech floor malted barley and fresh Saaz hops and collaborating with the goddamn Czech embassy and stuff. And they're sending them out there. They're translating the cans into Czech, so they've got half the can is actually in most. There's barely any English even on it. Like, and their stuff is just it's not just in Ontario, not just BIM. Like, dudes like Silo out here are doing it, and Hildegard and a few other people are doing some incredible crispies from this new renaissance. So it's almost like kind of what you're just saying there, that like Europe are taking notes from us, you know, like Lervig, Omnipollo, Mikkeller and stuff like that. I didn't know it was Mikkeller. I thought it was Mikkeller. But they are taking the notes from them, and they're, you know, putting ice cream and all this crazy shit in the beer. And then North America and so forth are taking notes from Europe now, and now we're all, you know, it's almost like there's this natural universal balance to beer is kind of happening, from the crazy to the plain, simple, pure, glorious lager, which is my favorite. I'm a haze boy heavily, but I would take a lager over anything. If I had a choice, I'd be like, give me the lager any day.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful thing. It's
100%. Like a lager is the tool you can use for every occasion, right? Like, you know, it pairs so nicely with food. It pairs so nicely with by itself. It pairs so nicely with every occasion. And you know, there's a very practical reason why the craft beer scene was all ales. Is ales take 2 weeks to make and lagers take 4 weeks to make, right? Like 3 weeks to make. Like, you know, there is economies that are behind the drive of which yeast or where do you want to anchor your brewery in. Well, capacity is usually the issue for a lot of breweries, and you automatically, by brewing ales, get extra capacity at your facility. So clearly, as a craft brewer who is living hand to mouth, there is finances at play there that are going to make ales the predominant style. Also, ales have a lot more. You can do a lot more with it. You know, the range of lagers isn't as wide as the ale field, and you know, it's obviously technically more finicky. I was going to say difficult, but making beer can be difficult. It's an art. But lagers are harder to make because impurities or deficiencies in beer rear their head, and in an ale it could be complementary to the flavors. In a lager it could be a drain pour. And you know, it's great to see a lot of breweries doing lagers now, and finding those occasions and being able to build their base and provide opportunities for their customers and consumers to have more beer from them for more occasions. Like when I cut the lawn, I'm not taking down a pastry stout, and God bless Omnipollo.
Then you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, but the pastry stout just isn't going to scratch that itch, man.
No, like, it's generally not. I was even thinking about it recently. If you think about like whenever I talk to brewers, right? You're like, what do brewers want to drink? It's the exact lawnmower analogy where they work their ass off. They're carrying these heavy ass malt bags and doing this sweaty work all day long. What do you want to drink? You want to drink a nice, dry, crispy lager. So because they're the people who make the beer, that's what they want to drink. I feel like they drove the lager revolution. Like they just kept doing it. And then maybe they traveled and then got obsessed. And when they got obsessed, they talk about it more. So it's on their social media more. And then they're producing better quality ones. And then the craft beer nerds start trying it because they're sexy, because they do a slow pour that takes 7 minutes to pour this fucking thing. And the head is burning over like meringues. And then we're like, oh, wow, that gives them the same like flashbacks to pastry stouts when you put a little waffle cone and some other crazy shit in this glass. So I feel like it's the same type of visual and kind of like attraction for the beer nerds, but the brewers wanted it so bad, like, how do we get these guys to like this shit? And then they
you're 100% right.
I mean, I'm probably off on some of it, but I feel like the brewers definitely drove it. And
I also think some brewery owners got pissed off going to the staff fridge and opening it up and finding a bunch of like adjunct lagers in there for the brew team to crush on a after shift, right? Like, you know, it's a very real thing of like, you can drink a bunch of crazy beers all day long, but sometimes, especially if you love beer, you just want to drink a beer, right? Like you just want to have beer. And so I think there was probably brewery owners being like, every time I go out there, someone's got a 6-pack of some, you know, whatever, some nondescript lager, and everyone's waiting to end their shift and crush that. And it's like, yeah.
Let's make it. The blonde ales weren't cutting it. A lot of breweries were doing blondes or some whack ass shit like that. And it's like, well, you know, you got to invest the time. And I feel like more and more breweries are feeling it's worth it. Or I've seen a lot of breweries invest in those horizontal tanks now just for lagering. So it's not attacking their ale production. Like you said, you can do a ale in 2 weeks. You can do this bad boy in, like you were saying, 3 or 4. From what I've heard, it can be even 6 to 8 weeks, which is, it's too much. Are we on to the next beer, boys? I feel like we're coming on 2 hours, and we're only on 3. We've been yapping a lot. It's been a great chat. So
no, we can get into the next one.
Is this the next one?
Do you have the Bianca?
Yeah, let me grab that.
Do we ship you any Bianca?
Yeah, I got Bianca. Yeah, I got that shit.
The Mango Lassie.
Yeah, man, that's a fantastic. I'm gonna go to the bathroom whilst I'm doing it, but I can hear you from there, so I'm gonna fetch it and we'll come back in like 30 seconds. You want to talk to us about that beer, because this one is one of the most fascinating beers I think that you guys do. I used to eat a lot of Indian in Australia as well, a lot of big Indian population. So Mango Lassi is one of my favorite beverages. So when I first tried this, I lost my shit. This beer is like crazy similar to the real thing, but it's got booze in it. Can you like talk to that a little bit while I grab that? I'll be back in a
second. Sure. I'll get the other can. We'll have the reveal.
Oh yeah. Ooh. Yeah, so the Omnipollo Biancas is a kind of line of beers that are taking on a real life of their own for Omnipollo. The Bianca Mango Lassi Goza, you know, is kind of the one that really kind of caught fire. You know, and as we were talking about, it is very much like a Mango Lassi. They then have which we've done, the Bianca mango or maple blueberry pancake. They've got a peanut butter and jelly. They've got a number of different ones. This mango Bianca Lassi Goza is an interesting one for us because the very first batch we ever produced at Brunswick for this beer ended up being Hanoch's favorite beer. I think that, you know, Omnipollo had produced. It was incredibly viscous. We did that one with lacto. It had a mango puree that was just unbelievably thick. We all loved it. It was very, very thick. It was very viscous.
It's impossibly difficult to make.
It was impossibly difficult to make and to filter and to run
to carbonate Yeah.
But it was, it really scratched an itch for Hanoch at Omnipollo. We all really, really dug it, but it wasn't going to be a sustainable way to make it, at really any brewery. So we changed the process a little bit and found a way to make it, I think, that was more manageable for the brewery, that still checked all the boxes of what we wanted out of it. So, this beer really it's very, very mango forward. It's very tart, as you would get from a Goza. Not probably as tart as you would think. It's got.
Oh, you're on that's the maple pancake.
Oh, you've got the maple pancake.
Do you have the mango lassi?
Shit, I
The
do.
purple one?
The purple one. Bear with me.
Yeah.
This one.
I mean, you can have pancake, but
I had this. Craig sent this to me last. Man, this blew my mind. I heard you just talk about that. This was insane.
It's crazy.
Let me grab. I'm pretty sure I have the purple one.
So the mango lassi Goza, is again, it's got a bit of tartness to it. Fairly drinkable.
Obviously, the salt balance to it. I think it's a Goza.
I think one of the interesting things that a lot of people probably don't know is, we chat with Omnipollo about these recipes. We fall in love with beers and we get recipes from them. And the recipes come in and the brew team at Brunswick looks at them and inevitably they all say, the numbers have to be wrong because the amount of fruit that's going in this is pretty batshit crazy. We had one fruit sour that we did with them that was about 900 kilograms of malt and about 880 kilograms of fruit puree. And so the one hallmark of all of Omnipollo's fruited sours and fruited beers is they are wildly fruit heavy. And it's the thing that people that love about them. It's the thing that, brewers probably can't stand about them because they're difficult to work with. But they are, when you get fruit from these, you're getting fucking fruit because there's fruit. And there's a lot of it. And this mango lassi Goza, is a pretty good example of it, of the amount of mango that goes in it. Just drums and drums and drums of mango.
You probably get like the Canadian food guide. It's probably a serving of fruit. Like
you get that fiber.
All your servings of fruit, like
for the whole day.
Fruit in these beers is like
insane,
ridiculous.
I actually don't have the mango one. I got two of these, so I'm gonna crack this one, and that's okay because I've had both of them a couple of times each. They're
it's
both
a nice segue to the imperial stouts anyway, to the pastry stouts. So there you go. You're working your way up.
Kind of perfect. So this is like you said, there's 3 in this series of Bianca, correct?
They got a ton more now.
Yeah,
they've got a lot more of them now. But it really is a line that's flying for them. So you've got the maple blueberry pancake.
Oh, this is I don't know what they do. Sorry to cut you off there, Mike. The pancake and the maple in this beer is one of the craziest things I've ever tasted because I know maple, it's a sugar, it gets fermented out. So if you put maple sugar in, actual maple syrup, nothing happens. If you put maple sap or water in, it's like in there but doesn't taste like that. I just literally sipped a little drip on the can and all my entire mouth feels coated in maple. I know people can sometimes put it in a barrel or you put maple, the staves from a barrel in the fermenter to get that flavor, but I was very curious, what on earth do they do, if you know, to get, this is brewed here, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, this is brewed in Toronto, yeah.
Okay. What do you, this is some sort of magic. It's honestly some of the most, look how, like you were saying, how much fruit, look at the fruit in that. This is the, once again, blueberry maple pancake lassi, just like, you talk about the mango one. What's the magic with this? Because this is insane.
Yeah, so this one, so the maple blueberry pancake, we had to find a very specific blueberry that would really work in this beer, and we found this kind of field blueberry puree. Okay. The maple is a combination of a maple aroma and a boatload of maple syrup. And again, the funny thing about a beer like that, and we've done a number of maple beers with them, is Chris and I just happen to know 2 guys that have pretty big maple syrup kind of personal production. So they take it very seriously. They generate a ton of maple syrup, but it's all really for kind of friends and family production. So we hit kind of both these guys up for any Omnipollo beer that calls for maple syrup, and we put in an insane amount of real maple syrup, and then it also has a maple aroma. I think if you used only one or the other, if you only used real maple syrup, you wouldn't get the maple aroma.
No.
When you smell it, which wouldn't set the tone for the beer, and then the maple doesn't show up as much. If you only used maple aroma, you would set the tone when you smell it, but then when you drank it, you wouldn't get that kind of viscosity of maple syrup that you expect.
The richness, yeah.
So when you look at kind of Omnipollo in a number of their different kind of realms, I think where the kind of beautiful mad scientist chemistry comes in is the way that they kind of merge and use a number of different things together to kind of work.
Right.
The maple blueberry pancake, I mean, the crazy thing about it is, you know, you read the description and you say, I just can't understand how maple blueberry pancakes go with a goza. And you try it and you're like, oh shit, that's a maple blueberry pancake with a bit of a tartness of a goza, and it's there, and it survives, and it kind of works. And again, you know, their beers, like we've talked about, you know, are definitely not for everybody. But man, is it ever a different, interesting, rewarding, savory, you know, experience.
It's incredible. It's one of the most interesting, unique beers I think I've ever had. I feel like I've had a fair few beers, and it's just mind blowing. Like I love the level of creativity that goes into it. I feel like when you can taste every ingredient that's listed, from the blueberries, the maple, I feel like whatever they're doing to make you feel like you're eating the pancake. There's like, you know how you have sometimes you get those like. There's a great brew here, Pub Brewski. They do like the smoothie sour. They like the smoothie sour gods in Quebec, and when they have like a raspberry cheesecake one, and you can taste the graham cracker, and like they actually put cream, like Philadelphia cream cheese, in the fermenter and stuff. They out of their minds, but this is a very similar thing where like there's so much fruit in it, it's so thick, yet you can taste the pancakes. It's genius. I love it so much. I could tell. When I checked into it when I had it the first time. The Untapped were, like you said, it's not for everybody, and I was just like, "What is your problem? Don't you like fun, bro? Like people need to, you know, you got to understand this is what it is. This is, instead of making the pancakes, it's liquefied, and it's got the body.
It's interesting because the first time I tried their peanut butter and jelly lassi goza. We had it as a team in Michigan. We bought it. And in my head, I was like, I don't get it. And I really don't think I'm going to dig it because I just don't get it. My brain can't comprehend it. And I took a sip of it. And again, I shouldn't be surprised because Omnipollo was just very good at this. But when I tried it, I was like, why does that work? Like, why is that rewarding for me? And why do I enjoy that? Because in my head, I couldn't compute it. Yeah. And they found a way to just balance it and just make it an interesting drinking experience of a maple or of a, you know, peanut butter and jelly goza. It was super interesting.
On paper, it should.
And that's and that's the beauty of a guy like Hanok and Carlos and their entire brew team is like they come up with these theoretical recipes that when they describe them to you, you're like, I don't know that that's going to actually work. Like, I get it. I understand where you're going with this, but I don't know that it's actually going to work. Maybe on paper it works, but how are you going to make this thing actually work? And man, oh man, like, I don't know if we'll get to Padramas, but like, when we did Padramas was like, well, I'll save the Padramas story then, but it didn't sound like it was going to work. Right, no. Like this sounded like the craziest thing you will ever do, and no, you can't do that. No. Everyone says it's not going to work, yet it works.
It works.
And that's the thing with these pastry stouts is like, and they aren't for everyone. They definitely aren't. Certainly, if you're diabetic, they're not for you, unless you like a long coma like sleeps after drinking your beer, like
which we all do.
In context, again, the thing about the pastry stouts is pastry stouts drank by themselves can be very divisive. But if you pair pastry stouts with a dessert or food or anything, like if you do the pairings with them, you taste that beer on such a different level than you could ever appreciate it. The food is elevated, the beer is elevated, and it becomes much more approachable. And it's like that with any beer, obviously. When you have a food pairing that works, like, find something complimentary, or find if a beer is too hoppy, pour it in a glass and see what it's like with lower carbonation. If it's still too hoppy, take a bite of old cheddar and then take a sip of it and see what happens. Like, the pastry stouts fall into that camp of if you pair it with something sweet, all of a sudden, the chocolate notes could fade away and the coffee notes could just come charging forward. Like, the depth and breadth of different layers of flavors have different chances to breathe when you have all the complements hit each other. So, that's where I would say for anyone who finds some of these beers too challenging is like, well, if it's maple syrup, then have some maple syrup pancakes and see what else comes out when you drink it. I'm not. Sorry?
Would you suggest to pair this one that I'm drinking right now with blueberry pancakes, for example? Like, drink the blueberry pancake beer with blueberry pancakes, or would it be better to pair it with? I know you're referring to the pastry stouts, but I'm just curious. Would you pair this with something different or similar to what the ingredients of the beer are?
I mean, compare, contrast, and cut on your major ways of pairing.
Right.
Obviously, if you did blueberry pancakes, that's low hanging fruit to really compare the two things. When you do that, obviously it's going to balance out. Like when you eat maple pancakes or blueberry pancakes with maple syrup on them, it's going to cancel out a little bit of what you're going to taste in the beer. So some of the other things are going to come forward. So some of the goza aspects are going to step forward and be like, "Hello, I'm here. Welcome to the party, pal."
Right.
And so, certainly you want to be complimentary on those pairings. It could be other things that are sweet and malty or sweet and earthy, but you got to kick the tires and everything. I think it's worthwhile. Definitely, a lot of the pastry stouts are share cans, right? Like these are not. We've known some people that take them down because they love them and they crush them and it's their jam. And
there was a YouTube reviewer that did. He was like, his whole bit was, he would do like, what do I prefer, this beer or this beer? And he would drink two beers and, he would review them. And this review that he did was Omnipollo Prodromus, which is, 11%, and Flying Monkey Sparkle Puff.
Okay.
Which is, whatever, 10%.
10%, yeah, triple IPA.
And he necked both beers, in a 25-minute review.
He did have to take a break.
And he had to take a break, which, either he, who knows what he did in that break, but it was an aggressive review. Two 10% beers in 25 minutes. One that's a pastry stout, imperial stout. One that's an imperial IPA.
Yeah,
man,
sounds dangerous.
I can only imagine what that morning looked like.
And they are not necessarily bedfellows to be drinking together, right?
God,
like,
not in the
you don't necessarily take an imperial IPA and put it smack dab against something that is like a pastry stout. Those are completely opposite ends of the spectrum as far as flavor profiles. Are quite contrasting. So it's like, good work, man. Like,
like, if you can survive it doesn't sound like fun.
If you can survive, and he survived it, but man, he cranked these beers, and I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, that's intense. Usually, what I would do with the 10%, if I'm not splitting them with Tiff, I will have them on a night where I'm probably not going to drink much else. Like maybe you have something earlier on and then you go and have the 10% and you kind of sit with it and it's fine.
Yeah.
Recently, I got a little cocky and I was like, well, I wasn't supposed to. I've got really, like, I don't know about you boys, but during COVID, I used to just kind of drink every night because I got so much stuff to get through, and then I start feeling a little like under the weather. I'm like, I should probably stop now for a few days. And then I used to kind of get sick a lot because I would just push my body too far. So since COVID, I've got 4 nights of the week that I drink strictly and 3 that I don't, and I've probably broken it half a dozen times in a year. And one of the times recently, and it's been really good, like mentally, like the nights that I drink, I'm good, and I make sure I time the podcast with all that and everything. And on a Wednesday is one of my non-drinking nights. So maybe like 3 or 4 weeks ago, I decided like, oh man, I got a bunch to get through. It's like, let me do a 10% beer. And then I got some stuff from Richmond. I did like a nice little risque border trade thing with my friend in Vermont. We bought some Vale, some Trillium, and then he sent them over and it made it. And I sent him some stuff and it made it. And we're like, thank the beer gods. And I had like this 10% triple IPA, this Riesling Sauvignon Blanc thing or something, like triple IPA from the Vale. And I was like, all right, let me have this other 10% stout afterwards, Black is Beautiful from Saint-Guillaume Baron. And I was fucked the next... That ruined me for like a week. So I thought it was okay because if I had 10% beer and that's all I have, I barely really feel it that much. Like a little bit, but barely touches the sides. But if I've had 2-3 beers beforehand, then I have 10%, it's over. So I had those 2 in one night spread out 4 or 5 hours maybe, and it ruined me for days. So I can only imagine what this gentleman went through in 25 minutes with 2 of those bad boys.
Man. It's like 2 bottles of wine in 25 minutes, right? It's like,
face,
oh
man.
boy.
Like, fucking Jesus Christ. Yeah, you got to be careful. I think that's something that we don't always think about. It's a whole other conversation, but it's something to, like we try to talk about here. Is a bit of balance, I think, is important in craft beer because, people like all of us in the industry, you guys are, are way more susceptible to having to do it all the time because if you're going to the brewery and you're checking the beers regularly, I know you're not physically brewing it, but you might just be around it more. You're at festivals, you're expected to host and show people a good time, so there's always reasons to drink. I have a similar thing, but I've got more control over because I'm at home and I've got things that I'm required to document and I have to post and blah, 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 so I feel pressure sometimes. I look at beer and I'm like, beer feels, it's not in a bad way, but it's work. I look at beer and it's like, I gotta do this. I'm always thinking when I wake up in the morning, like, all right, if it's a drinking day, what do I have to do tonight? All right, I gotta do this. I could probably get 4 in because that's all I can drink. And blah blah blah. Right. So it's such a thing that
this is the unromantic side of the beer industry, right? Like when beer is a job, like there is a certain amount of that. Like it can be a grind.
It is,
and you get all this free beer and it's like, oh great, free beer, I'd love to have free beer. And it's like, wow,
it's not free.
There's also free is ever golden handcuffs.
People say that to me all the time, like, oh man, you're so lucky. I'm like, look, I'm extremely fortunate, but most people wouldn't put in the work that we have to do. Every time you see those beers, it's work because I'm never going to let people down because they're said like, I own a business. If my business, like I don't have any backup, like that's what I do. You guys are 10x what we are because we don't have, like I was saying before, the physical bricks and mortar that you have to deal with and stuff. Everything that you guys do, there's this constant pressure. You got employees because 2 people can't run a brewery. Like there needs to be a team of people, and you've got literally sometimes millions of dollars of loans and banks and creditors and investors and all these other pressures. It's just not that serious. So I'm always like, well, that beer and I also do this. I sit down with people like you. I look you in the eye or look you in the camera and whatever. And, we're having these conversations. So I'm like, when I look at this can, now I think of your faces, like this is Mike and Chris's shit. Like I got to do them proud. I got to make sure I promote their shit right. Because that's my job. That's what I signed up for. But a lot of people don't understand it. They just think it's all free beer and blah, blah, blah. And maybe it's the same with anyone else in the industry. If you go anywhere, you get taken care of and get free beer. You might not have to post about it or anything, but it's still work because you might be analyzing it every time you see it. It's like, oh, do you think the market could take this? Does Ontario need this? Could I get this in the LCBO? Do you think it would sell if I put it on the website? Do you think, you've got all of these things running through your minds about every time you drink something, what could that mean? So there's a lot of things I think people don't really get from all the different players in the whole spectrum of roles in the industry of what that means.
One of my very first bosses ever, and still a mentor to this day, said, hey, in this industry, there's the half where the novelty wears off of free beer and they realize that this is, a job and a business. And there's the other half where the novelty of free beer never wears off and their lifespan in this industry is very short. Right. and it was really a good one to be like, appreciate, kind of what you've got and what this industry is, but it still is a business. And it's not just free booze all the time and party time all the time. And it was a really good one, early on in my early 20s, where at the time it was like, holy fuck, like I have my, unlimited disposal to free beer. This is the best thing ever. To also realize, like, you've got to really take this seriously because it is a business and, it is people's livelihood and it is.
Well, you got to get up the next day and you got to do work, right? Like it's your job. Like you have to be able to, like, you have to be responsible.
Very much so. I think people do forget that. I've had, without getting too deep into it, I've had brand new Instagrammers DM me asking me how I get free beer and trying to figure it out. I'm just sort of like, you're really approaching this wrong, man. Like, this is not what it's about. Like, and there's a lot of people who try and do that, and there's a lot of brewery owners who might not be, if you think about it, people own a brewery. Why? Because they know how to brew beer, not because they know about marketing or any of that. Like, I own a social media. I don't know jack about accounting and stuff. I'm always a mess with that type of thing. So there's people who get taken advantage of because people hit them up asking for beer and they think, oh, well, this guy's got 143 followers. I should probably give him some stuff. And then they'll do it. And then they'll take the picture of a beer on their stove with their iPhone 4 type of thing. And it ends up being shitty content, no real review. The photo's terrible. And then you've gone and spent this money and sent this person beer. Then they think, sending beer to people sucks. I'm not doing that anymore. Yeah. And then they get burnt because they don't get it. And there's this whole cycle. And it bothers me as a business owner that people are falling for that and that people continue. There's a lot of, I think it's slowed down a bit lately. This was probably a year or two ago maybe, but I still see the types as an archetype of thing. And I think there's definitely a misunderstanding of what that is, whether it's from the, content creator side or whether it's from the actual, whether you're a sales rep or someone working behind a tap room or something at a brewery. It's there's definitely just a misconception of what it's all about, and we definitely have to be aware of what we're putting in our bodies, because as much as this stuff is fucking glorious and it's magic and it's amazing that it even exists, we do have to, it can have detrimental effects if we don't balance it out. And even if it's just on the old gut here, like trying to keep, we're all a little more sedentary than usual, sitting on our fat asses on couches and stuff and drinking and whatever, and trying now, we don't have the travel that we used to have and that mobility to, keep it off. And there's a lot of challenges I think people don't really get about beer. It's part of
one of my favorite examples on, all of that is, Mikkeller and the Mikkeller Run Club, right? So if you look at Mikkel, who started Mikkeller, he's been an avid runner his entire life, competitive runner for a good chunk of his life, kind of said running will be a part of my life until, I can't do it. And I like to go for a run and I like to have a beer. I like to balance the physical activity with the beer. And so he started the Mikkeller Run Club, as a, hey, first Saturday of every month, let's get together, go for a run, have a beer in one of my pubs, off we go. That little kind of concept has grown to the largest run club on earth. Jesus. With countries all over the world having bars that say, hey, meet at our bar, go for a 5K run, 10K run, 20K run, whatever. And when you come back, there's a beer for you.
And it's not just Mikkeller beers, right? Like it's, the run club is like just be active, appreciate beer, but be active and run.
And so I've heard a number of interviews where he talks about that. And it was just like, hey, look, I started it because I like to run and I like to drink a beer after. And I thought other people might like to as well. Again, it's grown into the largest run club on earth. under that whole pretense of you can't just sit home and drink beers all the time. Just like, living a life of just, running and drinking water probably isn't great either. So let's kind of bring them together and be responsible about it. And it's such a great program, that we've kind of gotten involved with quite a bit in Toronto of really helping to get going. And we've made it, Dan Grant has made it in an incredible chapter and an incredible, kind of thing. And we've contributed to it, but it's amazing. Like first Saturday of every month, like, even if you've never run before, come on out and walk it if you have to. There's a beer at the end of it, but get active and break a sweat and kind of balance that kind of side of the world that's really needed to be balanced right now.
Well, and like Mike and I do Dry January every year as part of a proof that we can still do it. Stephen Beaumont prescribes to more of what you're talking about of like pick more days of the week. Yeah. Sure, a month is great, but why don't you do it? The aggregate of if you do it every week and you pare down one day off or 3 days or however many days off a week, the aggregate is bigger than taking a month off in the long run of like total days.
Yes.
And obviously we can't be in this industry and not say that one, there's a problem for folks in the industry, whether it's bars and restaurants or beer reps or owners or whatever. But two, just healthy lifestyle, right? There is a misconception of the beer gut, and the beer gut has been pervasive over the years. And the beer gut isn't just because beer's caloric heavy; it's because people who drink a lot of beer are also eating a lot of wings and not doing anything. Yes. And in that idea of beer as a healthy beverage, like we partnered up and we represent Rally, which is a functional beer, electrolyte laden beer to promote recovery and rehydration. And that idea of beer can be a healthy component and a healthy part of
your life,
a life and a healthy life. Beer has been part of people's lives for centuries. It arguably the oldest alcoholic beverage in the world, and if it wasn't to boast too much, save people from the bubonic plague, right? Like drinking small beers, the kids drank small beers and adults drank beer, and they didn't get the bubonic plague because the water had been boiled. Like beer is a life giver, but it also can be abused, and us as owners in a company and purveyors of beer, it is a lifestyle thing, and you have to be responsible for that and promoting all the healthy aspects of it or healthy consumption of it. You have to have that as part of your everyday.
Yeah, you're so right, man. Even I noticed like over the years as the podcast got more serious and the beers were flowing more, I was putting on more weight, and during COVID it was a little more, and since I think October I lost like 20 pounds from
wow.
Well, I was already doing the strict 4 nights a week drinking, as 4 on 3 off, but I just stopped eating chips and stopped having ice cream and sweets. I went from like, I'm a big fan. During the afternoon we'd have a coffee with some cookies and shit, and I would usually have 4 cookies, 5 cookies. Now I went down to 1, so you don't completely deprive yourself, but just 1. And that 1 cookie, and cutting down these small things and then eating a little smarter, it just changed everything. I'm still mildly fluctuating a little bit because I've been a little cheeky since I kind of 20 pounds not bad. Like I still got a bit more to go that I want to get to. And then there's an Australian like pie shop near me here, and they've got all the fucking Aussie chocolates that I miss, and I keep buying them, and like that's a problem. But I'm managing it. I feel like just it's as long as as soon as it became conscious, and I was we bought it at one of those scales that has an app, like a smart scale. So every day it tells you I don't know if I believe it all, like the BMI and your skeletal muscle mass and all this bullshit, but at the very least it's a more accurate weight, and it documents it. You can see how it's going and stuff, and just to be very aware of it and be conscious, because I never wanted to be that dude who let myself go. I've always tried to do that, and I feel like that that's something a lot of probably people in the beer industry in every single facet could probably think about it at the very least. You don't have to do anything, of course, but we want everyone to be well and to continue to enjoy the beer, and that requires some balance. And like that run club is just such a fantastic idea. I'm certainly familiar with that. I think it's such a great idea to have.
Yeah, I subscribe to the whole philosophy of just break a sweat, regardless of what that is for you. If it's a walk around the block, for Chris, it's rock climbing. For me, it's cycling. Like, whatever that is, just break a sweat. Let some sweat be drip down your face, and once you do, it works. And if you can just do that, you're good.
Yeah, earn your reward, right? Like,
earn your beer.
The
hashtag.
Sometimes the reward is you had a tough day at work, and the reward is the beer, and that's justified for sure. But you should still earn it. Like, you still. And pandemic is a problem because we are all more sitting there. You're not even walking from your desk to the boardroom for a meeting. You're just sitting at your desk for the next meeting. Like,
all day.
You don't even have that extra 50 steps in your life that you would have had. Like,
seriously,
it's a challenge for everyone. And not just beer drinkers. People. Full stop.
100%. It's really true. It's just something that we always try and promote, and let's try to get people thinking about. With our blogger Nathan has written some pieces on that, and it did pretty well. It's either early this year or late last year about it, and it's just I don't think it's talked about enough. So I definitely think it's something that it's great that you guys are both consciously active and promoting the run club and all that type of stuff. I realized that I basically ignored a bunch of comments through this whole episode because we were just chatting and I kind of didn't want to fuck up the vibe. So I don't know if everybody is still here. I'm just going to read a couple out that aren't timely because some of them are responses to direct things that we were saying earlier, just to back up. My friend Daniel from Vancouver was here. Shouts to Dan. Bruce Morris. Bruce, if you're still here, he said, do I need to stop in Michigan on my way back home? He's a Canadian who lives in Dallas, and he just told me the other day they're moving back to Canada. Him and his wife, and they're the loveliest people. We met them through BAOS, and just wonderful supporters. So yes, Bruce, you do need to stop in Michigan, and please, yes, the boys are telling you. I will tell you everywhere you need to go. Just shoot me a message, and I'll make sure you go past there, and maybe pick some stuff up, and I'll come see you. What else are we saying? He said the Mikkeller Brew Pub in London is partially owned by Rick Astley.
Rick Astley, yeah.
Which is pretty funny.
You can get Rick rolled while you have a beer.
Yeah. We should call this episode Rick Rolled. He said, you guys were saying pounder. He's like, pounder, what a great Canadian term. And he did have a question. So there's some actually questions for you guys. So I did fuck up by not paying attention. I was just listening. We were just having a great chat. He said, what is your favorite brewery or beer that you've had in the past year? And it could be Canadian, American, whatever.
Yeah, let's stretch that out to the past kind of 3 years because of COVID. But that's a great question.
Yeah, because you guys have been everywhere. Like, I felt like we've usually been pretty well traveled, but you guys have us beat. I love it. It's inspiring.
I'm going to say, so the answer I'm going to give for the brewery is the brewery that surprised me the most that I ended up just loving was, and we talked about it earlier, on a Virginia trip, is Licking Hole Creek. And we don't import Licking Hole Creek. They're in Ontario. We don't import them. Different agency. But I was there on a trade mission and showed up, and it's a farm brewery that the scenery is spectacular. They got a disc golf course on site. They got ATV tours. They got all this stuff. It is a real farm brewery, and the quality of the stuff they're putting out of there is mind blowing.
Really?
And I think the reason I didn't jump on it when I was there to try to get them to Ontario was U.S. craft beers struggle in Ontario for the most part. That's a bit of a blanket statement. There's ones that work and there's ones that sell, but as a blanket statement, U.S. craft beers struggle in Ontario. And I didn't know if they would have the legs to kind of win in Ontario. And their beers are unbelievable. They're working here, but that brewery was so fucking cool. Like, awesome. so cool that I would very highly recommend anybody driving through Virginia to seek it out and go.
It's female owned too, right? Like, it's like actually right. by I forgot her name, but she's like a well-known
Lisa.
Yeah,
Lisa. We had an unbelievable night with her actually in Toronto with Garrett Oliver from Brooklyn.
Nice.
That ended up just being kind of a roundtable discussion that made it to a few different bars in Toronto and a very late night departure, and it was great. That was total serendipitous outside of the brewery story, but their brewery is pretty wild. It's great.
Yeah, that was a wild night. Like, it was Lisa from the founder, obviously, of Licking Hole, and then Garrett Oliver, Brooklyn, and Carlos from Omnipollo. After a Brewers Journal event, we were all holding court at the Amsterdam brew pub, or brew house down on the lake, the big one,
the downtown pub,
and it was like, it turned into just a fanboy. I mean, us as fanboys, but we were all rolling together, rolling in, rolling out, moving to have some cocktails here and there. It was, again, how awesome is their life? Yeah. I would say for my favorite brewery, and I've had a lot of great beers. I had a experimental beer out of the guys at Great Lakes a couple of weeks ago, and I can't remember the name of it. It was one of their experimental batches, and it was absolutely amazing. Like the blend of hops in it was unbelievable. It was from their, which was formerly the Tank 10 series, like their experimental side. Yes. But if I had to say in the last year, my favorite beer, I would say Granite's Best Bitter. And I would say that because it's consistently always been an amazing old school bitter, best bitter style beer. But it made me feel like I was on a patio. It made me feel like I was having a pub experience. And, in the past year, in beer across the board, anytime, it is like experiential and feeling where you are and what you're doing and all these things. And their Best Bitter took me to a place that I loved, longed for, and wanted. And they do real ales, they do cask conditioned stuff, and it was taking me to sitting at their place, having a pint, and I longed for that, right? I longed to have that pint. Mike and I sitting there, friends, everyone sitting there having a beer, and that one took me there. So that experience of drinking that gave me that projection that I was looking for, of getting me to a place and time that I felt like it was a normal pint of beer in a patio, and not a new beer, not a new brewery, but man, meant a lot when you're looking at the last year of drinking beer.
Hell yeah, man.
For any of your Vancouver listeners, Superflux has opened their new spot, in Vancouver, and
East Van.
The beers they're pumping out, pre, facility and post facility, man, they are just crushing it. Like,
you guys are working with them.
Putting out, you know what, kind of loosely, yes. I think it will blossom into something bigger. We love their team.
Yes.
We've had a couple really good sessions with their team. I think we're fully aligned on, this feels good, let's work together. We've brought in some of their beers and sold them through our online store. We want to do more together. I think we just got a lot of respect for each other, and they're running at full tilt. And they probably don't have a ton of capacity to be shipping beer to Ontario. We got a lot going on, but man, we love those cats.
Their beers are exceptional. When you guys did the event, I think it was
Color and Shape.
Yeah. And there was a Color and Shape, and I think
pretty much, and Gigantic.
Pretty much, yeah. Which I love it because of the Aussie. Pretty much, yeah, it was great. that you guys were doing with them, because Daniel, who was commenting earlier, is a good friend. I've been trading with him for years, and we had 4 Winds on recently, so he introduced me to them, and Twin Sails and Superflux and Boombox and all that crazy shit. In fact, BC beer is just out of control, and I know that they have. I don't know if you guys met Jake Clark. She was like, Jake.
Yeah.
She was working pretty heavy, bringing stuff out that way, bringing Bellwoods and Blood Brothers and fucking Dunham and all the fire out there. And I'm like, who's doing this shit out here? Like, we don't get anything. It's not fair. Like, and then when I saw you guys were bringing out, because I'd had those beers before because of Daniel sending them to me, and I was stoked. And I know that you didn't brew them out here, that you were just sort of, distributing as such. I was hoping that would blossom into something, because I really think that one thing that's missing, at least out here, is there's not as much focus on us getting the West. Like, they want all the stuff out there, and I know that, between Ontario and Quebec, arguably the 2, best markets in the country. I think so, in beer anyway.
Yeah.
Vancouver, like the BC market is just wild, and I'm always grateful to get my hands on anything from out there. So I'd love to see some sort of situation where they're able to, because I know Twin Sails, I was talking to Cody the brewer there, and he would say they were trying to figure something out with the LCBO where they could distribute, but it wouldn't have been any of their hops. It would have been like a farmhouse or stout or something that there has to go through the LCBO 12-week, aging program type of thing.
The crazy thing is, the crazy thing is that, historically on sales data, Ontario drinkers aren't buying a ton of BC. Really? Like, when you look at, the beers that, get imported from BC to Ontario, all the beers that we love and respect and are crushing it, when they get imported from BC to Ontario in the LCBO, they just don't perform that well. When we kind of had the Superflux feature, it sold out in 2 days, which really highlighted for us, holy shit, people really love Superflux here, and there's something. But it's when you look at all of the sales, and we have experience, with a few different breweries, from BC. When you look at all the sales in the LCBO of BC breweries, they really struggle. And, we hope that, breweries like Superflux and 4 Winds, are the ones that cut through, because they're making just such incredible beers. But there is this weird barrier that, once they get imported and thrown on an LCBO shelf, they just don't work. And so maybe we just continue to sell through the bodega and we never go the other route. But man, like, that scene out there is phenomenal.
Yeah. And I'll add, 100%. Like, BC beers on shelf at LCBO have had a hard time, and it doesn't matter whether you're the central cities of the world or wherever. Like, I mean, you can have great reputation, great beers, and find a hard time on shelf at the LCBO, and there's a ton of reasons for that. It's a challenging atmosphere to innovate in when you're coming from outside of Ontario. To innovate in real time, it can be a real challenge, because you're innovating a year later and $1 short by the time you go through the process. But there's some changes happening in the consignment program at the LCBO with the movement from their specialty services warehouse downtown to a third party in Brampton, and there is going to be some opportunity to really, where previously it was more of a challenge to do some private order stuff. Yeah. There is a very 2021 opportunity of seeing importing of specialty beers, interesting beers, getting to market on one-off basis. 20 cases of this, 30 cases, 40 cases of that. Like, there is an opportunity there. As you mentioned, with the times is a 12-week program, right? By the time it gets here and gets through lab, it gets through this and gets through that. The best years of its life, best weeks of its life are spent someplace in Durham at a warehouse. But hopefully that can be expedited. Hopefully this change in the consignment program and the specialty services and private order will make it so that it's faster, easier. All things point to yes on making this a smoother, faster, easier process for folks. And obviously hats off to the wine agents of the world who have helped facilitate this, because the wine world is far more developed in this consignment and private order side than the beer world is. But we get to ride in the coattails of that, because the process is the process, and it's the same whether it's wine or beer or whatever. It's the same process. But I think 2021 has some opportunity to bring in some of those specialty beers, one-offs, maybe not your everyday favorites because they just won't travel well, but stuff that is certainly special. There is opportunity. And then in Ontario here, we have bars and restaurants are now legally allowed to sell off sales and retail beer, wine, spirits to take home, which has been made permanent here now. And so that is for this consignment side of the business
a big kick in the door.
It's a revenue. It is a new retail revenue stream that's opened up. That is very interesting.
Yeah,
very interesting.
I love that. That's what I want to hear. Just these archaic laws from literally 100 years ago, blocking something as simple as alcohol, when now there's a weed. Someone said to me the other day, I forgot who it was, maybe it was Craig. He was like, there's a weed shop on every corner in Ontario. Over here, it's not like that because we have the specialty beer stores, but y'all can't have your own independent beer store over there. But there's independent marijuana stores everywhere, dispensaries and shit. And it's just like everything's so backwards and just makes no sense. I'm like, guys, stop. I thought really COVID should have spoken to the lawmakers and the decision makers in a way that, like, look at what these archaic laws are doing. Like, Ontario can, like, exactly what you just said, like places like Bar Hop or restaurants or whatever can now sell, you could sell them cases of these beers and they could just sell them direct. Other breweries like Dominion City in Ottawa are buying, they have the Friends of the Dominion, they're just buying shit from everywhere else and selling them, and it's this whole reciprocal program. Town are doing it, like blah blah blah, everything's great. Here we, you guys can get it on Uber Eats and stuff. We don't really have that here. It's like a little bit, but not really. And it's a sort of like, shouldn't it really like tell these lawmakers, like, all of these old school things from 100 plus years ago that we're dealing with, like in a time of crisis and literal worldwide global pandemic, like, aren't they as redundant as ever? And shouldn't we just be doing everything? Like, we shouldn't be scared of alcohol anymore when marijuana is now legal. Like, it's all just super redundant, and it's like becomes political. And I can only imagine, like, I'm frustrated just talking about it, and I'm not even directly linked to it, so I can imagine from you guys' perspective, it's just
like, let's pretend for a second that our population can have a beer responsibly and walk in the street with it and go to a park and not burn the fucking city down. I mean, let's pretend for a second that that's the reality.
That's where Quebec is really got head on Ontario. Of like,
yeah, man.
It's not legal to drink in public, but you can have a pint on a sunny day in a park, and you're probably not going to get hassled. In Quebec. In Ontario,
it's legal here. It is legal here if you have food.
Oh, it is legal.
If you have food. And you know what's funny? I thought food meant chips. So one time when Tiff and I first moved here, because Tiff's from Toronto, so I lived in Toronto first. And then we came here and we were just bringing packets of chips, but not even opening them. We were just leaving them there. And then, like, a homeless dude one time was like, dude, you can't do that. You fucking got to open it at least. Like, come on, try. I'm like, oh, all right, my bad.
No way.
So I think the chips don't quite cut it. I think you got to have like a sandwich or something. But usually we'd go to a park in the summer, particularly last year when there was nothing else to do, and we would meet a friend for a distance thing, and they would bring their drinks and we'd bring ours, and you just bring food. So you bring like some little charcuterie, those pre-made packs where you get a little bit of cheese and some meat and stuff, and it's fine. It's literally legal. It's fine. It's only if the cops want to like bust your ass if they don't think that's enough of a meal or whatever the specific rule is. But
the definition of meal,
whatever it
is, for cities like Toronto and Montreal and these in Vancouver, where the cities have people pushed into condos, and certainly during the pandemic, you don't have a backyard. You really don't have any outdoor space.
No access to gym.
You want
people to have a beer in a park.
You want to relax. Like, to be honest, and maybe it's a first world problem, but that right to be able to barbecue, relax, have some grass under your feet, and enjoy a beer or wine or whatever. I mean, there's bigger fish to fry in the crime-stopping world than taking down a guy and writing him up for open liquor in the park. Like, you know, the city has created this atmosphere where it really is almost, it should be a right for people to have a responsible beverage. And that means not being drunk in public. That means not littering. That means all those things that you can't do. But if someone wants to have a pint after work and unwind with their feet in the grass, the sun on their face, in a beautiful atmosphere, and they don't have that because they live in a condo, you should be able to have that. Like, I mean, this shouldn't be a restricted thing. It should be, you should be able to have it. And again, it's all about, the laws are all made around people abuse them, and then you have, the exception becomes a rule, and this guy had like 10 beers and then caused a ruckus.
But you know what, though? I mean, a huge eye-opener for us in the kind of scope of non-alcs and low-alc beers was our first time going to Sweden. And in Sweden, you're allowed having an open container of alcohol in the street if it's under whatever it is, 3% or 3.5%.
Yeah.
So that's the alcohol content. And then when you go to the liquor stores and the grocery stores, the selection of beers that are under 3 or 3.5%, whatever the number is, was astronomical. IPAs, stouts, black lagers, red fucking ales. And it was like, wow, like this is progressive. Like, you're allowing people
created a whole economy, yeah.
You're allowing people to go to the park with beers. It's pretty tough to get bombed off of a ton of 3% beers, so that kind of mitigates that. Right. It really promotes that responsible, enjoy the outdoors, throw a frisbee and have a beer kind of drinking culture. And the selection was great, and the quality was great. It really, for us, was an eye opener of, yeah, this kind of makes sense.
Because Sweden is similar to Ontario. And to be honest, Quebec, to a certain degree, it has a government-run monopoly system. But if you were of this like 3% realm of alcohol, then you were open to grocery. So anything that was sub that could be sold at grocery. Anything that was above that was sold at the government stores. Quebec's different because you have the dépanneurs and even in Ontario here now with our grocery system. You know, our grocery stores can sell anything sub 7.1% alcohol. So you've got a full range there. But what Mike's talking about is creating this economy of low alc beers, responsible beers that have far less restrictions on them, and you can drink them everywhere because they become like the new 0.5% near beer type, not restricted or not as restricted beverage.
Interesting. I just froze. There we go. Changing cameras. The DSLR died. Okay, that's fascinating. I didn't realize that that's how they do it. It's just it's so much smarter.
Isn't it smart? Like, isn't it? When we left there, we're like, man, that's clever. Like, you know, you're mitigating a lot of the social responsibility because, again, it's a little bit more difficult to get crazy loose on a 3% beer. And yet we're encouraging the support of small brewers and beers and that outdoor engagement, that responsible balance. It was really eye-opening, and it was really impressive, to be honest.
And I heard on that note that the Omnipollo Conks is the highest selling, it's Omnipollo. Is the highest selling beer? Is that correct?
I think it's their fastest growing beer.
Fastest growing.
Mikkeller's Drinking in the Sun is the number one selling non-alc beer.
And that's the other one that you guys sent through, which is the wheat beer or something. Is that correct?
Personal Best, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a version, a new Canadian exclusive version of a recipe that was developed that was similar to Drinking in the Sun, but not drinking in the sun. It was our version of it, using the same yeast, the near yeast, which is Mikkeller had developed this yeast that there's tons of ways of making non-alcoholic beer, or not tons of ways, but there's a handful of ways. Obviously, arrested fermentation, dealcoholization. But what they use for Omnipollo conchs and for personal best is a yeast called near that doesn't eat maltose. It only eats dextrose. And so when you're brewing the beer, it can't take the malt-based sugars and eat them. It can't consume them. So then you have to feed the yeast. So you get a very traditional way of brewing beer to a certain degree, of fermentation profiles and things like that. It has its own fingerprint that the conchs and personal best with the near yeast, they both have this very the esters from the near yeast in the flavor profile ends up imparting a bit of a fingerprint of citrus to it, which is complementary to any of the non-alc beers. Conchs, we really lean into it. Personal best, it is a supporting character. We have more hoppiness in personal best.
Okay.
But the personal best non-alc is very similar to the drinking in the sun. And drinking in the sun in Denmark is head and shoulders above all the rest of the non-alc beers. And they taste like beer. Like they're beers. Like they taste like beer. The experience very beer. Like it's not like it doesn't feel like a substitute. It feels like you're drinking a beer, and it just so happens you're not drinking a beer with alcohol in it, which is the goal.
100%. I used to think that non-alcoholic beers were pretty shit. I never really liked them, but then I started to understand you have to approach them, and this is fizzy hop water. It's not beer. It's very different, and if it happens to have the characteristics of beer, whether it's the haze or like the conchs has that real strong lemony citrus thing, like you were talking about, and the mouthfeel is just absurd for that.
Yeah,
it's it shouldn't possibly have a mouthfeel like that.
And that's the big thing for the non-alc beers. Like the mouthfeel really
changes
for most of them. Is like they're it's non-existent. You'll love personal best. Like you'll really enjoy it.
I'm excited to try it.
It's solid.
Yeah. No, I'm appreciating it on a new level, and like I was saying with the 4 nights on, 3 nights off, one thing that's kept Tiff and I like comfortable with it or being able to get through it. I don't need it all the time, but if you have a non-alcoholic beer, the act of popping the can, pouring it, and I make sure I'll get one of my beer glasses to pour it into it, so you're almost replicating the experience of drinking. So, and it's almost like a placebo effect. It tricks your brain into being like, yeah, you're having a beer. Look, there's hops in this. Smell this shit. This is tropical.
Yeah.
Like everything about this experience is like drinking a beer, but then there's no side effects of the drinking, and you're giving your body still that break whilst getting a bit of flavor with pretty minimal calories. So it's I very much, I feel like there's like a big place for those type of beverages, and it seems like over the last year they've risen in popularity. So I think it's super smart that I knew, like I've had conchs 2, 3, 4 times, and it's great. So I wasn't aware of the Mikkeller one, so I'm excited to try that. And I like that you guys are doing that and being, it's a really good way to round out that portfolio. You can definitely make these type of products that are high quality, that are tasty and shit. Did you want to do the last one, or are you guys feeling like
Super Tramas?
Yeah, you want to do it?
Oh, and a high note.
Why the fuck not, right? I'm not scared.
We might as well, and we have a great story to tell.
Yes.
When we talk about Padramas, because Padramas is very, very near and dear to our hearts. And obviously, Omnipollo was a partner of ours before Padramas was born.
Right.
But Padramas was one of the first beers we ever brewed at Brunswick. Full stop.
Okay.
And it was the first Omnipollo beer ever brewed at Brunswick. And Hanoch himself dreamt up the recipe while he was on the plane coming to brew at Brunswick and visit us.
So he was
and
there.
So it had never been done before.
Oof.
And Padramas has never been done anywhere else. Padramas is ours, essentially. You know, it is Ontario's Omnipollo
exclusive
beer.
No shit.
Yeah.
Can you? I'm gonna go grab it. Can you keep talking about maybe some of the ingredients of what the beer is, a little bit more about it? Because this is like this is one of the first, I would say, I had this. When did it come out? 2 years ago, maybe.
No, more than that now.
More than that?
3.
No, more.
3, maybe 4.
4 years ago, probably the first batch. Yeah.
Okay, I think I had it around that time, pretty early. One of my good friends is Shahan De Silva, who owns Lost Craft, and he brews out.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So Shahan used to get me. He gave me my first Zodiac and the Prodromus. So he was always telling me about you guys and what's going on. So I think he was the first plug that I had to Brunswick and to what you guys were doing. So when he gave this one to me, I was like, what on earth is this? And I believe it was probably my first pastry stout that I am, like true pastry stout with all of these graham crackers and all this crazy shit. So you don't maybe like talk about that, because that is actually probably, if you think about it, quite significant in the scheme of Ontario craft beer, as far as like you guys might have actually brought in what was to be and made it locally. The first local international pastry stout that the province had seen.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Keep going.
Yeah. You know, for us, it was a crazy one because we'd started this relationship with Omnipollo. We knew they were this globally renowned, credited brewery. And we wanted to produce a stout, in Ontario. And when Hanoch sent through the recipe, it's safe to say that the whole brewing team of Brunswick looked at it and were like, what the fuck is this? Like, what are we supposed to do with this? It has graham crackers and cookie dough and caramel and coffee and chocolate chunks and
just
vanilla and just everything. Like, nobody had ever seen on our team. And keep in mind that our team is a very experienced team that has done a ton of different beers. Nobody had ever seen a recipe like this. Chris and I, who had been in the industry at the time for 15 years, had never seen a recipe like this. And kind of like a band asks for their rider, Hanoch asked for a couple of things that he wanted on site for brew day. And one of them was a certain type of cookie dough. Yeah, there it is.
Look at that. Okay.
He wanted a charcoal grill with a pot.
Well, I think we inserted the charcoal grill side.
You wanted a way to cook cookie dough.
We needed to cook the cookie dough.
Oof.
And so we started improvising a little bit on the interpretation of how do you cook cookie dough.
Yeah.
So Hanoch comes to Brunswick, and we have everything ready for him. We have this cookie dough. We have a charcoal grill on the front lawn that we've fashioned up
with a Dutch oven
on top,
hot oil in it to deep fry this cookie dough.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
And so Hanoch's in the kitchen at Brunswick making this cookie dough, and then he's bringing it out to the front lawn and he's dropping it in this Dutch oven to deep fry the cookie dough. And again, the brewers are looking at him going like, what is this guy doing? And he's pulling the cookie dough out of the Dutch oven after it's cooked. He's putting it on this like cookie sheet and coming in and dumping it right into the kettle.
Insane. Absolutely insane. Dumping all this deep fried cookie dough straight into the mat, right? Like it was
I had never seen at the time. I had never seen that much coffee going into a brew. I had never seen that much real caramel going into a brew. It really was batshit crazy. Chris and I very quickly looked at each other and said, we'll never make a nickel on this beer because the ingredients are insane. But it was kind of a little bit of a let's just see what this guy can do. And
it's so intense. I
love it or hate it. I don't know if anybody's ever tried it and hasn't been like, wow. And again, either wow, that's not for me, I hate it, or wow, that's really crazy. But it has so much going on in it. It's to date, you know, I'm now 20 some odd years in the industry. I still have never come across anything so unique, so challenging to brew,
Yeah.
and so rewarding in my life. Like, I've never been a part of a beer more complex than this one in my life, and it's a great one to go back to. I really truly haven't had one in probably 6 months. This is probably a little too cold for how it should be enjoyed, but as it warms up, you'll get more of the vanilla, more of the caramel, more of the chocolate. But it really is killer, man. It's a killer beer.
It was crazy. Like, I remember when we were firing Brunswick up, we had the LCBO category buy, the beer category buy, to just see what we were doing and to understand the concept of what are you trying to do here? Like, what is this? Like, you know, obviously some import beers have been brewed by the big guys over the years, hither and yon, but concept was a bit new and a bit off to the left field. And this was a beer we presented to them of, you know, Padramas coming out, designed specially for the Ontario market and exclusive to them. And you know, the LCBO folks are outstanding people anyways. Like, the beer categories, they're really great people, and they were just like, this is awesome. Like, just so awesome to be able to innovate, create this in market for them. They got it right. Like, it was a pivot. It was a pivot for them on how they interpreted import beer versus domestic beer, and, you know, is Omnipollo a domestic beer or not, because it's brewed in Ontario, it's by Ontario people, employing Ontario people, but it's an international brand. But the Padramas was the beer we pulled on tap, and we all had like just this epiphany of
in hindsight, it's such a big beer for us.
Yeah,
you know, in hindsight, it was really a big beer for us on a number of levels.
It's that's actually fantastic to hear a bit more about it. I didn't realize the importance of this thing, and even drinking it now in my 2021 knowledge of pastry stouts and craft beer, it's still intense when, in the same way I would sip any pastry stout for the first time. You're like, oh fuck, there's so much going on. But like, I remember when I first had this, I was like, what is even happening here? And I'm like, oh yeah, this all makes sense. This doesn't blow, not blow my mind, but I'm like, this is normal now, which means that this beer very, very arguably paved the way for what has to come over the last, particularly over the last maybe 12 to 18 months.
Right.
In both Ontario and Quebec. I mean, there's certain Brew Bar Canada out here have been doing pastries for a while at a very, very high level, and a bunch of people are now doing them. And I feel like Ontario are a little behind Quebec with pastry styles, which is strange because typically Quebec was always.
But Quebec is really like high ABV beers are a hallmark of Quebec breweries. Like,
definitely,
Quebec has always been into the higher ABV, more complex beers than Ontario, anyways. A more Belgian European style of like
historically
beer.
yes, for sure. And then they kind of just stepped up over. I was like the number one. What's the word to say it nicely? I was shitting on Quebec for the longest time. I've lived here since 2012. I was in Toronto for 2 years and here since then. And I was just like, Quebec was cool. You're right. They did barrel-aged stouts and farmhouse and all this stuff really well. But I'm like, where's the rest of it? Like, I was in Toronto. All our clients were there. So I was in Toronto once a month for years. And Tiff, my girlfriend's from there. My brother lives in Toronto. So I was always there. And I was always just bringing beer back. So I was never drinking Quebec beer. And I know the last few years I started getting more and more into it here. And I would say since mid-2019, Quebec has really been dominating. And they've stepped their game up. And basically any style, you name it, they nail it now. Yeah. And it was historically it wasn't the fact. But you name lagers, smoothie sours, they started. No one did it before anyone in Quebec did. Like, Quebec started it in Canada. Pastry stouts are probably some of I don't know if I've had anything necessarily that much better than what's happening here. the haze now is national, as good as anywhere else, if not better. So it's good. Quebec has done well. I'm very proud of them that they've stepped up and done that. But being that they were so far behind on the trends, so it's good for them to sort of catch up. But it's like it's cool because it's nice. There's a few different things. Ontario does these things and Quebec does these things. And now with the closure of the border for such a long period of time, essentially a year now, when we are 45 minutes drive direct from the border, probably 2 hours all the way into Burlington, like I was saying earlier. I know people here who literally went to, they were at every Foam and every Burlington Beer Co. launch. I'm like, how the fuck are you at every event? And these people were going every weekend. They were leaving from Montreal to go there every weekend. So now I feel like, and I think this is an interesting opportunity for people in Canada, that at the very least between these two provinces, because we're right next to each other, both with some of like the two arguably most exceptional craft beer scenes in the country, provincially. Now everyone, well, oh my gosh, really, I can't just cross the border. There's a lot of risks involved in attempting to thwart customs and ship beer. But now I'm looking at, if I'm in Montreal, I'm looking at Ontario. I'm like, what's going on there? What are you guys doing? What can I get from there? And then Ontario is the same because everyone wants something new and different. Obviously, you guys are providing that in-house, being that you're bringing stuff from Europe and BC and elsewhere. So you are a one-stop shop anyway. But I feel like it's just definitely like a way that people are looking now at each other in a way before they've maybe been looking south, and now they're looking east and west to
which is great.
It's funny, we have an LCBO in Hawkesbury, which is right on the Quebec border.
I go there to take my stuff back, to take all that empty stuff.
No
way here takes them.
They're crushing it for us. They're taking every Omnipollo SKU we can give
them.
They
have everything, bro. Every time I take. Tiffany's cousin is from England. He's 23 years old. He's a kid. He lives in this building with us. He works for us. He works for our agency. We're schooling him. He didn't know much about beer. I'm fucking teaching him about beer. So every time we come in, I'm like, get your trolley, bro. What do you guys call it? A buggy or a cart. I'm like, come on, let's fucking go. And I'm going through. Every time I'm like, you had Aura there last time. Prodromas. He's getting all the stuff that you guys have because he's picking it out from the shelf. Because what's this? I'm like, you need that. Put that in there. Get to it. Because, and you're right, like I never thought about that. Hawkesbury stocks everything. That's like one of my favorite things. You go to the beer store, drop the shit back, get you $50 for all the cans and stuff, and then come back around and swing to the LCBO because Tiff wants to get the VQA on Ontario wine that we can't really have access to here because that's let's be real, Quebec wine doesn't even touch the surface on Prince Edward County or Niagara wine. It's cool, but it's not the same thing. And then the beer selection is crazy. I'm really happy to hear you say that because I always wondered why they had so many. And because I haven't been to the LCBO like I used to be, I don't recall the volume of craft brand products that are in there. So every time we've gone by there, I've always made sure, make sure you get that. And because your stuff is just always in there. So are they stocking it because the Quebec side want it? Is that
100%.
100%.
Steph, who runs our inside sales, kind of said to Chris and I the one day, like, man, this kind of small store in Hawkesbury is taking everything Omnipollo and crushing it. And we literally Google mapped it and zoomed it out. We're like, oh shit, they're right on the border. Like, it must be Quebec people coming over and
it's literally the closest
one. And so we've been loading them up and they've been a great store for us. Great store.
We see that at a few places, not just Hawkesbury. Cool. There's a couple of border town LCBOs that have some folks deacon across and doing a little bit of a cheeky border run, run, provincial border run.
Hey man, it's a thing. We genuinely do it, and I love it. I really enjoy going there and taking a look at it's like such a part of like a day. Like we don't own a car because we're like right in the city, so we rent a car for the day. We take our fucking ridiculous amounts of recyclable bags full of bottles and cans and crap, and you take them back and you get your money, and then the next stop is direct to the LCBO, and it's a part of that experience and just being like, amazing. Oh shit, they got this. Like, because we were there so often before, it was like, whatever. I didn't even go. I just went to breweries. And it wasn't even really, I didn't even go to LCBOs, but now that
Well, you can the stuff that's like not available there, you can order online and have available, like have it shipped to that store too. Like the Lickbo,
LCBO?
yeah, the LCBO e-commerce. Like if you find something that isn't available there, you can buy it and then have it available to pick up there when you go there.
Get fucked.
Not just beer, but anything. You can get a little bit of like interesting things that may not be stocked there, but have them delivered there, and then you can just snag them when you come across.
That's amazing. That's actually, I'm gonna tell the missus about that because that's crazy. I imagine that's like with beer, everything seemed a little. I was always trying to figure it out because obviously, if you went to Kingston, there'd be a whole bunch of local stuff that they didn't have, and you went to Hawkesbury and they've got different stuff, but the regional ones, I guess. I mean, but I never really thought that you could do that because that's crazy, even for like. Maybe the wine selection isn't fire at one store, but if you know what you like and they don't have it, you can just order it.
Just have it ordered in, yeah.
Oh,
it's great. Yeah, it might take up to 2 weeks depending on location, but give yourself a buffer of a week to 2 weeks and place an order and get it delivered to your store, free shipping, and it's beautiful.
You pay for it in advance, and then if you get it delivered to the store, there's no shipping fee. So if you're going. Yeah, you can get anything the LCBO has, pretty much anything the LCBO has in their entire worldwide portfolio, you can have shipped to that store and waiting for you.
I mean, that's a plug, man. I'm glad you guys mentioned that because I'm sure there's probably a lot of people who didn't know that. Maybe I know we have a growing Quebec audience now. Most of our audience wasn't always in Ontario, and now we're kind of catching up out here. So for any Quebec people listening, that's amazing. You jump in the whip, you just hit up Hawkesbury, hit up Cornwall. Maybe there's some stuff like Ottawa, Gatineau kind of region. But that's really cool. I really like hearing that a lot of your sales are in that store because that means that we can't get this stuff. This is exciting shit, man. Like the stuff that you guys are bringing out is genuinely exciting. And in a time where, maybe people weren't as focused on that and they were dipping over to Vermont because it's easier, or upstate New York or something like that. Now, I hope that people have been in the last year been going over more and being like, yo, this Omnipollo stuff, Omnipollo, the Mikkeller, the fucking Lervig, all that stuff, among others. You guys are obviously that's not the extent of the portfolio. Obviously, there's a lot more than that.
And in theory, you can now get these products, fresh. I mean, Zodiac, we can, every 2 weeks to kind of 16, 17 days. So the nice thing about Zodiac is it is always fresh everywhere. And if it's not, we want to hear about it. But that beer is always fresh everywhere. Okay. And everything else that we kind of do, again, now that we can brew it, kind of locally, and we can try to kind of can it and plan our production times, that, people could, anything that's listed in the LCBO, people can go order, get it to their local store, and have it fairly fresh and representative of the recipe. So it's pretty exciting. It is. And, the LCBO has been, again, it's a government monopoly. It can be a tough one to work with at times, but, they're great. They really give us access to every corner of this province at the same price, and to your province now, give access to, border cities and border towns and border stores, and get great products fresh.
That makes me so happy. I love that shit. That is incredibly cool, and I think that's what craft beer needs genuinely right now, is that kind of excitement. And that whilst, I know Canada federally made it legal to ship between provinces or whatever, but the problem is that interprovincial tax agreements with every single thing, so that's why it hasn't really gone any further. So the next best thing is being able to, zip even from Montreal. It's I think it's about an hour tops, a little bit less to get to Hawkesbury, maybe 45 minutes, 50 minutes or something. It's not bad at all to just zip in, take your empties back, get a few fucking pennies for that, and go spend them bad boys on some goddamn prodromus.
Yeah. leave your dollars in Ontario, right?
Right.
Cash your cans in and leave the dollars.
Cash it, leave the money there.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful.
It is interesting. I mean, one day we'd love to obviously list products and have products in Quebec,
and
Yeah.
it's high on our
up.
list. Obviously,
Eat it up.
Yeah, with such a big population and everything, but man,
it's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. It's a challenge. It's
any agents or distributors listening, please reach out.
Yeah,
I know of some.
Go back.
Yeah, I know of some. I can talk to you about after. There's a bunch that have pros and cons, but there's some that can get you in the building and stuff. Definitely. And I know there's benches out here now. Trailway from New Brunswick is out here. Two Crows from Halifax. There's a few different ones that have gone through some companies to get out here. BAOS started it really. They were the first ones, and then it kind of sort of went from there. Because otherwise, it's been like a monoculture here, for better or worse. They people here really appreciate that, but I think as the craft beer scene has evolved and got a little bit more nuanced and complex, and people's palates have changed and stuff, they're looking for something different, and what you guys offer is completely off the rails to anything that anybody could dream.
Well, and a lot of the beers we offer, obviously, when we're looking at the Omnipollo stuff and the Mikkeller stuff, they are not. There's no strings attached to this is an Ontario beer, quote unquote.
No,
obviously, it isn't tied to an Ontario brewery per se. Sure, it's brewed in Ontario, but this is an international brewery, European brewery. Like there's a little bit less baggage to it than say, hey, here's an Ontario brewery trying to come in and or mow our Quebec brewery's lawn. It's a tiny bit different.
Definitely. I think that's not even the concern as much as that used to be, because that's really what you're right. That's exactly what it used to be. People were like, well, we don't want to eat into our local sales, and here is very much about local and stuff like that. But I think it's changed a bit now, being that there's so many breweries from outside Quebec here. And I think the mentality has kind of changed, and there's a few companies that work with it, like Transbrew, really, who are owned by Glutenberg in the Glutenberg group. They're one of the main ones that a lot of people come through, and they they seem to do pretty well. People seem fairly happy. Their bench in Niagara went through them, and that's how BAOS got in, because they store the stuff in there. I'm not sure what the process is. I don't know if you have to go through the 3 month 12 weeks.
It is 3 months. Yeah. It's a ridiculous embargo period that they have on product.
Oh, basically, it's obscene. It's obscene.
Making sure that every beer that comes in from outside is old code.
Is dead. Is dead by the time it gets to the show.
And tasting like shit by the time it comes through. But
I'm not sure if that applies to there might be a way around that now. But anyway, once we wrap up, I can talk to you guys a bit more about that. I got a couple of, didn't even get through all the comments. There's a few more. Tiff was saying earlier, the hospitality at O'Connor was incredible. She said she was so uncultured she realized today that it was Omnipollo and not Polo, which of course double L, so it's that. Jeremy was saying, what are they drinking? Is that Bianca? That is correct, it was Bianca. Steve is saying, being a part of CBC Co. virtual tasting last May. Steve from SO Beer Boys here. Oh yeah, I know Steve. What are the chances an organized trip to the church in Sweden happens in 2022 or 2023?
I mean,
2022 is pretty good,
but it's not a bad question of like, do we put out a little 20-person junket and do a little tour, a little dip your toe into the life of the dream that is of being a beer person, and take people over there. 2022 would be the earliest we'd do it, because the church
this year.
I'm sure vaccinations are going to be a thing, but the church is just finally commissioned their brew house, their major brew house from Braucon, and so they are like just getting up and running. And so to go there and see things in full Technicolor is probably a 2022 thing more than a 2021. But practically, traveling is
it'll be a great trip. Like, it's
It sounds amazing.
They got Omnipollo's Hat in Stockholm, which is their kind of pizza oven taproom concept.
Nice.
They have Omnipollo Flora, which is their kind of park concept that only pours beers that are soured with wild yeast inoculated in the park, which is really awesome. And then they got the church. So yeah, that would be a killer trip.
But I mean, you know, maybe we can toss it in the comments below, but like the Mikkeller celebration of beer, or Mikkeller beer celebration, coupled with a trip to Stockholm. I mean, that would be
a good package.
If we were to ever put a package together of like, hey, you want to see what it's like to be Mike and Chris? That would be the package of like, if we were to ever put something together to like come along, drag along a bunch of folks.
Sponsored by Advil.
Yeah, sponsored by Advil.
And you're going to need
coconut water.
Yeah, coconut water.
Electrolyte
powder.
One.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
You definitely, if you're going over there,
it's an easy one to do.
It's an easy one to do.
Half an hour flight, you know, Stockholm to Copenhagen, half an hour flight. It's a beauty.
And again, the Mikkeller beer celebration is such a bucket list. If you love beer, like if you love beer and don't even have to
every
be
highest
a nerd.
rated brewery you can ever imagine in one building.
Everything's there.
Time.
If you want to drink Pliny, if you want to drink Zombie Dust, if you want to drink basically anything that is ultra rare, it's all there on tap. And when you buy your ticket, you have access to all of it. There's no other tickets. There's no like, how many tickets is this? Like, is it 3 tickets, 2 tickets? It's like you walked in the door and you have a glass.
And they fill your glass.
You can drink whatever you want.
Yeah,
it's absolutely amazing. And for a beer fan, it is bucket
as good
list.
as it gets.
Oh, better. Yeah.
I'm convinced as fuck. Steve is still going. He says, Superflux was unreal. It sure was. He said, the bottle shop in Ontario is such a major step forward. I can't tell you how many people I know are messaging saying, did you try this or that? Because they've been buying from a local restaurant. It's a really, really great point.
Interesting, yeah.
He also says, Zodiac is fire and need to give the wife 12-month lead time. Fair enough, man. I respect that. Yes, the bottle shop in Ontario, the whole situation is just glorious. I even had I was on the phone with a brewery out here recently, who knew one of the like a famous bar in Toronto called Cold Tea, and they shut down.
Yeah.
Opening another store, so he knew them, and they were trying to bring the stuff out. He was just asking me about like marketing stuff, how to get people to be aware of this Quebec brewery out there, because he was excited because it's something that we don't have here. Like restaurants can't just really open up their doors and just sell alcohol from the front door. So like, it's very interesting. I almost wish like Ontario and Quebec could just combine, because it's almost like some laws are awesome on each side and some laws are shit. And can't we just combine all the great ones and just make them?
Well, that off sales licensing is not unique to Ontario. I mean, BC's been doing it for years, decades.
That is true.
Almost.
Long before all this.
You know, Ontario is just taking and repurposing some of the cream of the crop of like, hey, this really helps, or at least it opens an opportunity up. You know, it's a challenge for bars and restaurants to make money off of it, because, you know, selling beer that is available at the beer store, the LCBO, or grocery store, and selling it for a markup price to make sure you can make some money on it. You know, the convenience factor on that means you're probably got a fairly thin margin on your markup of it. But that being said, it is a tremendous opportunity. And for, especially when we're talking about wines and private order stuff, special order stuff, there is a real future in turning bars and restaurants into a retail segment.
Yeah.
A legitimate retail segment of very cool stuff.
It seems like it'd be a missed opportunity if they didn't at this point. Really based on sort of, you know, the learnings that we took from this time. And it's like, well, people are used to it, so why would you stop allowing that.
Yeah.
A question that I was thinking, I know there's something else that we're not really drinking specifically tonight, but Craig told me about it mostly, is the Darling Mimosa that you guys are doing now, which is the essentially the mimosa in a can, like champagne and orange juice in a can. So I was going to ask, are you guys getting more into the, would you ever bring out wine or spirits, or because, technically you're an agency, but you also have the access to the making it locally. Are you dabbling in that, or seltzers? Obviously the RTD stuff with regard to this Darling product, which looks fucking amazing and is genius. I've never seen a canned mimosa before, and maybe they have existed, but I've never seen one, and I'm like, why hasn't this happened like 20 years ago? Where are you guys with that market?
I think candidly, we found our niche pretty early on specialty beers, and kind of wrote it out. We brought in New Holland's bourbon, which did okay for us, and the LCBO was very expensive.
The LCBO asked for more of it.
Yeah,
actually.
It was very expensive. It was a great product. I think we've always wanted to spread our wings. We just haven't really maybe known exactly how. When the RTD kind of seltzer craze happened of vodka sodas, we didn't feel we wanted to get into that because the competition was so fierce. White Claw was spending insane amounts of money. That one didn't feel right to us. And then we came across the Darling guys, Ontario wine, real orange juice in a can. There's two different types of mimosa drinkers. There's the mimosa drinker that likes, a lot of orange juice and a bit of wine. And then there's the mimosa drinker that likes almost all wine with a splash of orange juice to make it acceptable. And Chris and I both fell in that, wine category. And so when these guys came along, we chatted with them. We really liked them. We'd known them for a while. They were great. And then we tried the product. And the first thing I said was, oh, shit, this is how I like a mimosa. It's all wine with a little bit of orange juice for color. And Kim from Darling was like, yeah, that's how I like a mimosa. And that's why we made it that way. And it kind of was like, okay, this feels good. Like, it's Ontario, it's local, it's the way we kind of enjoy that beverage. There's nothing like it in market. So, let's look at it. So that one was a no-brainer for us to say, okay, let's spread our wings a little bit from beer with a product that we really enjoy. Rally is another example. Like Rally, we really had our eye on the functional beer space in the US, in North America, in Europe. And these guys came along. They're young. They're energetic. They want to take the world by storm. I love to cycle. I'm in that world. And so it just felt right. It felt like the right product for us at the right time to kind of branch out. So, yeah, I think we've been open for the last 8 years to branching out. We've only ever branched out where it just felt good. Okay. New Holland's bourbon, a tequila that we imported. Yeah, we've really only branched out where it just felt like the right thing to do versus, wow, the world is saying go this way, go find one.
I like that. That's more authentic, right? Like, it's
our whole team has to sell it, so we've only ever made decisions by committee. It's bit us in the ass a couple times, but we put products out to our whole team and say, drink it blind first. We give you a sample without seeing the branding at all. What do you think of the product? And if people say, wow, it all tastes like shit, that kind of stops that scenario right there. If everybody says, wow, that tastes great, then we show the can or the bottle and we say, okay, now what do you think? Oh, wow, like that looks cool. That's really funky. That's great. Could you sell it? And so we've made decisions in our entire company's history in that form. And when our whole sales team says, wow, I loved the taste of it. Now I see the can or the bottle. It looks great. I love it. Yeah, I'd like to go sell that. We say, okay, great. Let's go sell it. And again, there's been products that Chris and I have been very excited about that we've put in front of the team that they've said, yeah, no, I don't think we can sell that, and we don't like it, and we've bailed on it. And those times sting, but at the same time, everybody's got to be stoked about what they're doing day in and day out. Yeah. It's the only way you can really move the needle in this province and in this space is by really loving kind of what you're getting behind.
Yeah. That's a really good point. It's competitive. It's like congested to a degree. So if, you know, the team isn't on board to really like go balls to the wall, then it's kind of hard. And it must suck because I'm thinking of it more from your perspective as a fellow business owner. I'm sort of like, well, if my team didn't want to do it, I'm like, well, I want to fucking do it. It's my business. But there is, you know, you do have to consider that, you know, the people that are going to...
Well, success... Yeah, like success of the brand and market relies on your team loving it and being able to sell it and being able to bring the story to life, bring the product to life. And if they can't do it or they don't believe in it, it doesn't matter how much Mike likes it, I like it. It doesn't matter. That means nothing. Yeah. It means a fail at the end of the day. And so, you know, we try to, as much as possible, take our team everywhere. You know, drink the Kool-Aid, visit the brewery, visit wherever we're going, and go see what it's like, so they can experience it too. So it's not just Mike and I saying, "Man, you got to see this place; it's awesome." We try to take people there so that they can see it, and you know, it's part of the dream. It's part of all the collective dream of, you know, why do they work for us? They work for us because hopefully we're great people to work for, but more importantly, we have great brands that they love to represent, brands with great stories, and they get to hang out and visit them and see cool stuff.
And, you know, the selfish two-sided side of it is, you know, there was a big brewery in Michigan that really wanted to work with us. We wanted to work with them. We wanted to make it happen, and we said, look, like, the only way we can make this decision is to bring our whole team down to your facility, have a tour, drink the beers, eat the food, and then we're going to poll them and say, what do you think? And so that brewery loved that approach and said, hey, we haven't really had many agencies or distributors kind of go that deep, but sure, because we paid to take everybody down there. They paid for the beers and the food, but we paid to take everybody down.
Actually, no, at one of the places we paid for.
Right, well, we paid for that too. You know, but we took the whole team down and said, look, like, we're kind of excited about this, but don't let that cloud your judgment. You know, like, tell us what you think. Tell us if you like it. Tell us if the vibe feels right, because you have to sell it. You know, thankfully, everybody at the end of it said, this felt great, and we can get behind it, and we understand it now that we've been through their doors and whatnot. But that's a great example where in our model, where maybe it doesn't work, is we take the whole team down, we're excited about it, and they say, yeah, I didn't like the beers, and I didn't dig the brewery, and it felt, you know, disingenuous, and we don't pursue it.
And of course, you know, you can take the team down and say, tell me what you really think, and then they tell you what they think you want to hear. Mm-hmm. But our team's not like that. Like, no. We breed.
They're ruthlessly honest.
we try to make it as open and as honest. Again, because, you know, to a very real extent, if the rubber is going to hit the road, you know, they are going to be held to metrics of sales, right? Like, you know, if you say, yes, I can sell it, and we bring it in, and then you can't sell it. Well, you know, the flip side of it is you said, yes, I can sell it. Let's put some metrics on it of like, what can you sell? Here's what I think you should sell. And then they can't sell it and then they can't come back and be like, well, I already said that can't sell it. So, you know, there's a practicality to it of like, don't just tell me, yeah, it's amazing because Mike and Chris thinks it's amazing. Tell me, is it amazing? We think it's amazing. You think it's amazing. Can you sell it? Will it sell? All those different metrics, because at the end of the day, we all live and die by how successful it is here in market. And Mike and I depend on our team being really great doing their jobs and really great at following through and finding those customers and finding those consumers and all that. It doesn't matter really what we think of how sexy a brand is. If it doesn't sell, it doesn't sell, and it doesn't amount to anything for us.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point. I hope that other businesses are taking that tact as far as involving their sales team, maybe in the decision making. My gut feels probably no, that people are doing that, but you guys clearly have a lot of trust in your team, and in their decision making, and in the fact that even if you believe in something like that must be, as a fellow business owner, if I'm like nah, this is the one, and then everyone's like no, it's not. I don't know, that cognitive dissonance has got to be a little tough to rock with, but the fact that if you
we've got a really great team that we really believe in, and they're all straight shooters, right? They're all very honest. They all know what they like, and they're all very forthcoming with their feedback. Right. And again, it's not to say that everybody's going to do cartwheels down the street and say 100% is my favorite brand ever, but we've been pretty fortunate, I think, in when we give them the kind of bandwidth to say, do you like this or do you not, under these pretenses? They make great decisions. And again, it's not always what we want to hear, but when they do say, yeah, we love this, we'll roll with it, we know they're going to really roll with it.
But it doesn't have to be what we want to hear, right? Like this, businesses survive and die on the backs of the entire team.
Yeah.
Mike and I can't will this business to be successful. We can't wish it to be successful. We can't make decisions and make it successful. It really is the team, right? Like it really is the folks that you employ, the trust that you give, the trust that they give to us of, we're going to help you make the right decisions. You're going to make the right decisions. I mean, you just can't do it alone. It's impossible.
But I also think back to the very early days of our business and you'll know the example I'm speaking of, but there was a brewery that wanted us to work with them that would have been very lucrative for us. It would have been financially great. And when we sat down with them, and we kind of liked their beers, to be honest.
Yeah.
But when we sat down with them, it just didn't feel good. They weren't the people we wanted to deal with. The culture didn't feel good. It just didn't feel great. But financially, it would have been amazing. And we both walked away and told them, we're not going to partner with you just because we're going to go in a different direction. And it's that exact same element of, if you don't really believe in it and you can't really put your weight behind it, it's tough to do your best. And those financial gains can be very, very short term in those scenarios. Whereas our team all loves Zodiac. They'll run through a wall for Zodiac, much like we will. And Zodiac is that kind of engine that probably shouldn't have succeeded in this province and really is a beast.
It's a super valid point. Like when people come to Ontario specifically, but they should be looking at this in any market you go to. It doesn't matter whether it's Ontario or anywhere. But the metric of success is not points of distribution, it's rate of sale.
Okay.
And at some point, you obviously need those points of distribution. At some point, you need to be at 100 stores or 200 stores or 300 stores. But you really need to prove that you're doing it right. You really need to prove that you understand your consumer, that they are going to come back and buy it time and time again. You're going to generate that rate of sale. You're going to generate that repeat customer. And until you create that pattern and understand that, yes, what we're bringing to market is resonated. Yes, how we're bringing it to market, people understand. If someone comes to us as a partner and says, how fast can I get to 300 stores? It's like, we're not speaking the same language. Because, if you want to, if your sole intent is what size is the PO you've ordered and how many stores we're in, and not focused on how can I make my brand strong in the market? How can I grow my brand responsibly in market? How can I grow a sustainable brand in market? We're not speaking the same language here.
Yeah.
Like it has to be a slow growth. It has to be sustainable growth. It has to be the right growth. It has to be growth built on your brand and your brand's principles and your brand's philosophy. And that's how we build a foothold in market. That's how we build all of the big points of distribution. That's how we grow in this market. And at the end of the day, success on the LCBO's eyes is based on rate of sale. They don't care how many stores you're in. Obviously, you're in one store and selling 10 cases at one store. That's not good. But they want to see that the consumer is there. They want to see high rate of sale. They want to see a healthy rate of sale. And as you grow and expand your footprint on points of distribution, they need to know that that rate of sale stays up. That every market you break into, every store you break into, you're maintaining that. And it takes a long time for partners to understand, because a lot of people are, stack them high, watch them fly, right? Like put it on every shelf in every store and we'll be successful.
It'll work.
And it just doesn't work that way. It used to work that way, and in some retail models it works that way, in some retail atmospheres it works that way, but in craft beer it doesn't. It really doesn't. You need to create pull on shelf. You need to create awareness. You need to do all these other things. It isn't stack them high and watch them fly. Like it is thoughtful execution in market to build sustainable brand awareness, to build sustainable brand pull, and that's how you get that general list. That's how you get a second listing. All these things, it's a longer burn, but if you're serious about the market and you don't want to just ship, I need you to buy 12 pallets of beer this year. Make sure you buy 12 pallets of beer. Well, man, you can't do that. We don't sell beer that way. I'm not interested in selling beer that way. We're interested in building partnerships, and it's got to be a deeper relationship than that. And they have to be committed to the process.
This is genius. Honestly, hearing you say all this shit, this is blowing my mind, because in social media, we have clients be like, all right, how many followers can you get me? I'm like, it's not about followers. It's exactly the same. Yeah. It's not about stores. It's not about the vanity metrics. It's about the community. I would rather have 1,000 followers that really give a shit about me than 100,000 followers that are just fake or there that don't really care. Because that engagement is really what matters. So basically, you're saying exactly what we say on our YouTube channel, for our social media, and to our clients all the time. Like, it's all about that slow, sustainable, authentic, organic growth that you can't rush it. If you rush it, you'll end up really nowhere, back to square one, because it's not going to work. This 100%. Is fascinating to hear this, because it's the parallels are disgusting. It's exactly the same conversation. So
and you can certainly help grow it faster, right? Like there's things you can do to help grow it faster and see it faster and all that.
But it's not always healthy.
But you know, at the end of the day,
it's not always sticky. Like it might work a little bit, but is it going to keep them? It might get them interested temporarily, but is it going to keep them coming back? And that's really what you're talking about, is that organic long-term growth.
And the challenge is, again, getting back to that conversation, the challenge is, you know, in your industry, there's going to be people that are going to, you know, want to pay you a good amount of dough to do it the wrong way.
We've left money on the table, bro. We've left so much money, some to the point where we were almost broke and we said no to stuff, and because it didn't feel right. And in hindsight, it was the best thing we ever did.
Yeah, well, and your reputation matters more than anything, and your ability to stand behind a brand matters. And yeah, you know, we've been there, man. We've been there in the business where, you know, the business was not flush at all, and companies were coming along looking to throw dough, and it was very attractive to take that dough, and we just didn't do it.
You know, we're paid on volume, right? Like it's cases at the door that we're paid on. If I could sell 1 billion cases of your beer, sure, I'd want to do that. But I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in selling the right cases to the right people. Like, you know, sure, there's a carrot for us as craft brand company to sell more volume, but
I was going to say the billion cases sounded pretty good.
Sounds tremendous. But we're as an agency, we're compensated on volume at the door. So sure, more points of distribution, more volume, it's all good. But that's not what we're in here for, right? Like, we love every brand like our own. We want them all to succeed. We want fewer partners, deeper partners, and you can't do that by just like the smash and grab of, I sold 10,000 cases, that made me whatever. It doesn't matter. I would rather sell fewer cases, which doesn't make any business sense to us, but we like ourselves, we like the people we're working with, and we know we can grow that sustainably if we build a great foundation. Like, it is counterintuitive to the business model that most agencies work for, because it's volume-based business, and that's our business is all volume-based business. We get paid piece by piece, every case at the door, but that doesn't get us out of bed in the morning to sell 100,000 cases or 10,000 cases. What gets us out of bed is building great brands, working with great people, and that means doing it right the first time, making less up front, but knowing in the backside, this is going to be much, much better, and we're all going to be happier, and we're all going to have a much better time. We're not interested in super lucrative, high volume, whatever. I mean, sure, yeah, we are. Anyone out there that has like super lucrative, high volume stuff, but that's not what we're in it for.
Omnipollo is a great example of that. Like, in the early days, it was a lot more work for them than it was revenue for us. And it probably seemed like a lot of work for them to get us going. We're now in a point where it's a very lucrative business for them. They prioritize Canada in a very big way because they love the quality of the beer we're putting out. Carl, I think, really appreciates our attention to detail on the canning and the labeling process. They are the most diligent partner we've ever come across from a branding standpoint. And while 10% of the time you want to pull your hair out, 90% of the time you're like, fuck, I really respect these guys for taking their brand as seriously as they do. And it's why they're as successful as they are. But that's a very good example where we really weren't making a whole lot, putting in a ton of time, and they were putting in a ton of time. And you really see that foundation of, let's treat this right. And it's now become a really great business for both of us, for us and definitely for them. And we all are on the same page of putting out the best possible thing we can. And it's going to work. And it's just all going to work. And that's kind of the pretense of it. And we're in a really great spot with them, especially.
I love that. This is such a refreshing thing to hear about. It just sort of like sometimes I feel like we're like screaming at brick walls type of thing, where everyone's like in the social world just gives a shit about like, when am I going to get 10,000 followers or what's going on? Whereas like you guys are saying exactly what we're saying. It's just in the beer context. It's just, it really comes down to, if you want to grow a following in anything, in any shape or form, whether that's physical sales or followers on social media or whatever the hell it is, it's got to be, there's no shortcuts. There's a few things that's going to get you there a little quicker. Then there's certain little things you can do that might be sticky. It might just be temporary, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's that slow, consistent, persistent growth over time, and continually putting out quality and engaging that community and making sure that community feels valued and serviced at all times, so that in a couple of years' time, they're going to still stick around and be like, yeah, I fuck with Omnipollo, because all of their shit, they won't even know about Craft Brand Co. most likely. You guys are like the silent heroes in the background making this happen, because they know about Omnipollo. You're growing their brand. So people are like, well, the Bianca, this shit tasted like a fucking goddamn blueberry maple pancake. And then they had this thing that had graham crackers and vanilla and shit and coffee. And then they had this crazy pale ale with aliens on it. Like, like this consistent thing over time when it's really great stuff that people are just grateful to have access to, and they try it every time, and they're like, well, the branding's fire, and it's always at this LCBR, and I look at the can, if they're savvy enough, they're like, well, that's only a few weeks old, that's what I'm looking for, so on and so forth. And I think that people could be well to take heed of that from multiple perspectives, whether they're the brewery actually selling their stuff and you need to grow that slowly over time, because there's really not that much that sort of grows really quick. Maybe some of the hype breweries that kind of do it, and really they're the 0.1% of things, and they're few and far between. And it just happens. I know some of my friends own these hype breweries, and they're like, bro, I didn't fucking ask for this. I just wanted to make beer, and then people are jumping on it, and they're losing their minds. I'm trying to keep up, and they're angry at me, and I just don't know what to do. So it's, yeah, I think a lot of businesses could very much take heed to exactly what you guys are saying. I think it's a really valuable lesson to whatever. I know this is a craft beer podcast speaking specifically to that, but any industry could take heed, because I'm seeing parallels nonstop with our business. So it's fantastic to hear you guys say this. It's very cool.
Well, to your point on the followers, like, I remember how scary it was saying to U.S. breweries that were like, hey, I see 685 LCBOs in the province. How many can you get us into? And I remember how scary it was saying 40.
Yeah.
But those 40 are going to fucking crush. Like, those 40 are going to be amazing. And those 40 are going to get you the rate of sale that you want. And the category is going to say, this is working. What's next? Mm-hmm. But I remember how scary it was, not saying, 370 or 350. Like, I remember what it was like saying, yeah, we're going to start you in 40 stores and having people look at you like you have 3 heads. But it really is how you grow a brand, and it's no different to your business, right? Like, you grow with the loyal followers that want to come back time and time again, and then you grow from there.
Yeah, you
grow from there. But the whole, how are you getting 100,000 followers? Like, fuck, it's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's something that we deal with every single day. And as we've had our YouTube channel where we give our social media tips and stuff, and that's growing really well, and that's created new revenue streams for our business, whether it's consulting, now sponsorships, affiliate marketing, all of the stuff that's come out of that, and just having to school people. We just spoke at a summit for medical aesthetics today, telling nurses who fucking do Botox and shit, like, fam, like, this is how you grow your social, and they're asking us questions, and it's not about followers. Like, oh, what's the amount of followers? How quick can I grow? And we had to tell people, because that's what people think, that it's all about now, and that's what people are obsessed with, is that sort of like unfettered growth. And whilst growth is important, it's not about the rapidity of it. It's it's that slow incline,
engagement, authenticity.
Yeah, man, and consistency. Like, do this stuff over and over. You guys have delivered over and over for 8 years. We've delivered podcasts for 6 years over and over. We've barely taken any time off, like maybe a couple of weeks over 6 years. We have not fucked around. So it's paid dividends in this real slow growth of delivering consistency. So whatever it is that anybody is doing, just deliver consistently over time, please that audience. Those audience will tell more people, do things like, particularly your clients, when the world opens up again, and then there's beer festivals, I imagine there'd be craft brand co stands at beer festivals where you would showcase all your brands, and then they get showcased there. Maybe they would fly over and they could represent and talk to people, shake some hands, smile, fucking pour some pints and stuff. There's ways to do this, but people need more patience. And in this world where everything's instantaneous because of this fucking thing, it's, that people expect everything to just happen in the blink of an eye, and kind of forget that growing a real community is a slow grind that takes time and energy and effort, sustained effort. So it's a beautiful thing to see what you guys have done, not even for yourself. That's the best part. Like, yes, you are doing it for yourself, but it's kind of not. It is, but it isn't. It's the same as us. It is, but it isn't. We're running client stuff. Yeah, it's about us, but it's not really. Like, yeah, you guys keep bringing, fire breweries in and doing well and creating their brands and making them do it properly. So, yeah, then people keep coming to Craft Brand Co., but really, you guys are doing it for...
They're coming for the brand, yeah. They're coming for the other brands, for sure.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's such an interesting parallel. I guess I've never had anyone like you guys on before, so these parallels, fucking 4 hours in, of course. I knew this would be a great chat. Hey, did we not? We knew it. We knew it would be. But yeah, no, this is genuinely fascinating. I feel like this is just a valuable conversation for a lot of breweries to have. I think breweries don't think about these type of things, being that I know we have a strong industry following as well. And I think it's just be really wise to kind of listen to what you guys are saying and kind of soak that up a bit, because it's just a perspective that a lot of breweries don't get, because most of the people that they would hear from aren't really speaking from your perspective, and everything you're saying applies to literally everybody. You know,
yeah. I appreciate that.
I think it's really valuable. On that note, I feel like we've basically covered everything at 4 hours. I'm super stoked. This is great. The beers have been amazing. This conversation was as fire as I knew it would be. You guys are fucking champions. I'm genuinely glad and very, very appreciative that you guys took the time to hang out and to chat. And I've been a fan of everything you guys have been doing for years. So it's a genuine pleasure. I mean it. Like to talk to you guys and hear the stories and the work that you guys, blood, sweat, and tears, have put into craft beer across, your individual careers, and then what ended in this. And I see how happy Craig is, the person I speak to regularly out there, and he's stoked, and he's always spoken so highly of you guys. So when the opportunity came up, I was like, yo, let me finally get these guys on. And he made it happen. So I just want to thank you guys very much. I genuinely appreciate it.
Really appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for everything you guys do to elevate the industry and elevate the awareness, and all these little things help build a better community. So really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think you guys have given a really unique voice to the industry in a way that was needed, in a way that was kind of consolidated, and yeah, we're really digging it, man. And I'm serious when I say, whether it's us traveling to just your neck of the woods and having a patio, down the street from you, or whether it's us, going somewhere really fun. I really look forward to the day that we can tip some jars somewhere pretty exciting together. It'd be really, really great.
Man, I'm stoked. If I'm in Toronto, I hope that things start to move in the direction with these numbers that we're all happy with, and I'll be in Toronto soon. So we're in touch, and if I'm in town, I'm gonna give you guys a shout, not even a question. I'd definitely love to do something else, hang out and actually just kick it a little bit more off camera, and
yeah, for sure,
and build and stuff. I feel like we just have a lot in common, and it's great. This is like talking to fellow, that's why I love this shit, man. Like entrepreneurial stuff and talking to other business people. It just happened to be in beer. It's fascinating to me, and I have so much respect for everything you guys are doing. Like, once again, because you guys have so much more pressures than we possibly even have. So I love it. I live for this shit. It's beautiful. What I want to do, I want to take the thumbnail. So I'm going to take a screenshot of this, but we're going to hold up some cans because I'm going to. So we have a bunch of them here. So yeah, get them shits. Hang on, let me see what I can get.
I'm gonna go Zodiac.
Yeah. Oh, if you're gonna go Zodiac, you've got that. Let me see if I can get something different. Let me go back to the old Mazarin here. If between us, we should have all of them. There we go. Boom. Yeah, which hand? This one, motherfucker. All right, ready? Oh, that is gorgeous. All our mothers are gonna love that. Mike, Chris, guys, thank you so much. Where can everybody find either you both individually or Craft Brand Co. online?
www.bodega.beer is our online shop. www.craftbrandco.com is where you can find us.
Instagram is at Craft Brand Co.
Yeah, at Craft Brand Co. on Instagram. And we got a lot happening this year, a lot of exciting shit. So please tune in.
I love it. Make sure you guys hit the link in the description to buy these beers that we had tonight. I think there's even one more in there that you guys might have.
You know what? We're gonna rejig the pack now that we've
gone the
kind of called an audible a little bit, but the pack will reflect everything we drank tonight, so it'll be all good.
And one last little quick plug. April is Autism Awareness Month. And 15% of all of our online e-commerce sales go through to autism awareness. So there's an extra little carrot for folks that are looking to make their dollars count when they're spending their dollars. So
yeah,
that's beautiful. I love that, boys. Thank you for that. That's fantastic. Boys, thank you for your time. Stick around at the end of this. We'll wrap this up, and then we'll we'll say goodbye there. But boys, thank you again for your time. It's genuinely appreciated. I know you're busy guys, and it's 1 a.m. on a Friday night, and we've just had 4 hours, but this has been super valuable. I hope everyone found it valuable as well. So guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the episode, smash the thumbs up, hit subscribe below, hit the notification bell so you know when the new drops. Follow us on social media at BAOS Podcast, and check out the long form audio so you can hear attractive, bearded gentlemen like Chris and Mike talk about craft beer. We are back next Friday at 9 p.m. We'll see you then, guys. Get in ya. Peace.